My brother-in-law bragged, "I'm flipping the family beach house, easy profit." He didn't know I'd quietly bought it, and the contractor waiting outside was furious. I was watching my brother-in-law stand in my father's living room, clutching a glass of champagne as if he had just concluded the transaction of the century, when I knew he was going to pull it off. He was about to lie to everyone again. "Big announcement, everyone," Jackson remarked with a forced smile growing over his face. The room became silent. My sister Sophie clutched his arm, grinning as if he had just proposed for the second time. "I am flipping the family beach house. The permits have been issued, and the renovations are almost complete. Should turn a good profit by spring." The room exploded. My father tapped him on the shoulder. My Uncle John, the different John, raised his glass. My cousins flocked around, inquiring about square footage, contractor fees, and if he had used the original hardwood. I drank my wine and said nothing, because what they didn't know, and Jackson evidently didn't know I knew, was that I had purchased that beach property 5 years prior. There was no family announcement, no group text, just myself, a real estate attorney called Luke Marshall, and county records that plainly indicated my name on the deed. Jackson had never owned it. He merely lied, like he usually did. The deck renovation was the most costly part. Jackson persisted, gesticulating with his champagne flute, but I talked the contractor down. The man demanded $25,000. I convinced him to pay $20,000. My cousin Emma leaned in. "Is it still the blue shutters or did you repaint?" "Keeping the blue," Jackson stated calmly. "Classic coastal charm. Buyers eat that up." I nearly laughed. The shutters were green. Had been green since 1987. My sister pinched his arm. "He's been working so hard on this weekends evenings. I barely see him." "Investment requires sacrifice," my father replied, approvingly. "Good man, Jackson. Someone needed to do something with that place." I'd been doing something with that place, renting it out seasonally via a property management business, generating a solid peaceful income while living my life 3 hours away in the city. The seaside home had belonged to my grandma. My siblings refused to deal with her death. Too much upkeep, too many memories, and too distant from their suburban lifestyle. I had offered to purchase it from the estate. My siblings had been relieved. "Take it," my brother Aaron had instructed. "One less thing to worry about," I said. I recruited Luke Marshall, paid the estate at fair market value and handled all of the paperwork. The entire purchase took 6 weeks. I didn't make a big deal out of it since that is not how I operate. I simply did it. Apparently, Jackson sensed an opportunity in my quiet. "When do you list it?" my uncle inquired. "March," Jackson said firmly. "Spring market is killer for beach properties. I'm thinking we list at $700, see what happens." We assumed he had partners and had some sort of claim. My phone vibrated. I received an SMS from an unfamiliar phone number. "Is this Michael Morrison, the owner of 847 Seabsy Lane?" I entered the kitchen, away from the party. "Yes, who's this?" "James Carter. We need to talk about Jackson Foster." My stomach sank. "What about him?" "He hired me to remodel your property, claiming he owned it. I've been working for 4 weeks. He owes me $18,000 and he won't return my calls." I gazed at the message, reading it twice and 3 times. "Are you at the property now?" "No, but I can meet you tomorrow morning. I'm in the city. Can you send me photos of the work and any contracts you signed?" 3 dots emerged, stopped, and reappeared. He said this was his family's beach house that he was handling the flip personally. "Are you telling me he doesn't own it?" "He's never owned it. Send me everything you have." The images started to arrive. Half of the new deck rails are installed. Bathroom fixtures are torn out and sitting in cartons. The walls are covered in fresh drywall compound. I had not authorized the work or approved the adjustments. Then came the contract. It had Jackson's signature, my property address, and fake permission numbers from the county. I knew they were fabricated because I had reviewed the county record system 2 months prior for my yearly property tax review. There had been no permits submitted. No improvements were approved. Jackson had used phony papers to engage a contractor to work on a residence he did not own, and now the contractor was 4 weeks into labor and supplies with no method of getting paid. I returned to the living room where Jackson was still holding court, lying and convincing my family that he was a real estate expert. "Mr. Carter," I typed cautiously. "I'm the legal owner. I have the deed and county records to prove it. Jackson has defrauded you. I think you should contact the police." "Are you serious?" "Completely. I'm sorry this happened to you, but I never authorized any renovations, never hired you, and never agreed to pay for anything. This is fraud." "Jesus, do you have his address?" I have the address where I'm supposed to send the invoice, someplace in Riverside County. That was where Jackson and my sister lived. 20 minutes from here. Send me copies of everything I wrote. Every text, every email, every photo. I'll forward it to my attorney and we'll figure out next steps. He said the permits were approved. He showed me paperwork. It was forged. There was a prolonged pause. I've been in construction for 12 years. I've seen some shady stuff. But this? Yeah. What do you want me to do? I considered that. Jackson is in the next room enjoying my father's champagne. Accepting congrats on a project that did not exist. About my sister, who had no idea she was married to a con artist. My family has always preferred Jackson to me since he is charming and I am quiet. For now. Document everything. I'll call you tomorrow. We'll figure this out. Okay. I walked back into the living room. Jackson was discussing his remodeling timeline to my cousin Marcus, who worked in commercial real estate and should have known better than to believe him at face value. The bathroom is the key, Jackson said. Buyers will pay premium for a good bathroom. I'm going luxury fixtures, heated floors, the works, heated floors in a beach house that would be used 3 months a year. My father drew my attention. Michael, come tell Jackson about that investment property you looked at in Portland. I'd mentioned it at another family meal 7 months earlier. I was astonished that my father remembered. I stepped up, stood next to Jackson, and looked him in the eyes. How's the renovation going? I inquired politely. Great, he said without hesitation. Contractor's solid. Works ahead of schedule. That's unusual. I know, right? Got lucky with this guy. What's his name? Jackson blinked. Who? Your contractor. Oh, James Carter. And he has taken responsibility. Yeah, why? I grinned. Just curious. Contractors can be tough to manage. Not this one. Professional operation. I nodded slowly. Good to hear. My sister joined us and slipped her arm in Jackson's. He's being modest. He's been so stressed about the permits and the timeline and making sure everything's up to code. The permits came through. Okay, I asked. Finally, Jackson stated. County took forever, but yeah, everyone approved. That's great. Which permits did you file? He stared at me like I was speaking a different language. The standard ones. Building permit, electrical, plumbing, no structural. The deck's not structural. It's a replacement. County usually requires structural review for deck replacements, weight load calculations. Jackson's smile tightened. My contractor handled it. Huh? Good contractor. My sister looked at me curiously. Why all the questions? I'm just interested, I said. Real estate stuff. You know me. She didn't recognize me. Neither of them did. They knew Quiet Michael, a software developer who rarely spoke at family gatherings. They were unaware of the rental income I had been quietly producing over the past 5 years. They had no idea I had been studying property law in my free time following several tenant issues. They had no idea I had a real estate attorney on retainer. They had absolutely no idea I was witnessing my brother-in-law conduct fraud in real time. I excused myself and proceeded to the restroom. I locked the door, called Luke Marshall. He answered the second ring. Michael, it's Saturday night, this better be good. My brother-in-law is renovating my beach house without my permission using forged permits. Silence. Say that again. I detailed everything. The announcement, the contractor, the images, and the bogus permission numbers. Luke whistled softly. That's fraud, like actual criminal fraud. I know. Have you contacted the police? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. You need to file a report tonight, and you need to document everything. Every conversation, every text, every photo that contractor sends you. What about my family? What about them? They think he's legitimate. My sister's married to him, Michael. Luke's voice became serious. He's committing fraud using your property. He's lying to a contractor. He's forging government documents. This isn't a family dispute. This is a crime. I know. So what do you want to do? I glanced at myself in the mirror. Michael, be quiet. Michael was overlooked. Michael was a quiet person. I want to let him hang himself, I said. Luke was quiet for a minute. Meaning he's announced the flip publicly to my entire family. He's committed. He can't back out now without admitting he lied. Okay, I'm going to capture everything. Let him continue talking. And when the time is right, I'm going to show everyone exactly who he is. That is hazardous. What if he does more damage to your property? The contractor is legitimate. He isn't going to ruin the place. In all honesty, the job probably needed to be done anyhow. I'll just make sure Jackson pays for it through legal means. Through legal means, Luke groaned. You are my client, therefore I will assist you. But Michael, take care. Family stuff becomes ugly and this guy sounds anxious to pull off something this large. I'll be careful. I hung up and returned to the party where Jackson was showing someone images from his phone. Before shots, he explained. The place was a wreck. Has not been updated since the 1990s. In 2021, I plan to remodel the kitchen with new appliances, worktops, and backsplash. The photographs he showed were from an internet real estate ad for an entirely different house. This was not simply fraud, it was complex, intentional deception. I remained for an additional hour. My father patted Jackson on the back and said things like, "Always knew you had it in you, and that's how you build wealth." My sister glowed with reflected joy as I watched Jackson accumulate accolades like cash. Nobody asked me how I was doing, about my job, my life, or if I had lately visited the beach home. I was invisible as usual, which turned out to be just where I needed to be. 2 days later, I saw James Carter in a coffee shop in Riverside County. He was in his mid-40s, with aged hands and sad eyes, and he had a 6-inch thick file folder. I've been doing this for 12 years, he explained, laying paperwork across the table. I have dealt with homeowners, investors and flippers. I thought I had seen everything. Tell me how he approached you. The job board advertising stated that he had inherited a family beach house and wanted to remodel it for sales. He showed me images, gave me the address, and stated he had the permits ready to go. I quoted him $25,000 for the deck, bathroom and interior painting. He settled for $18,000. We shook hands. Did he show you the proof of ownership? He said his name wasn't on the deed yet since it was still in his grandmother's estate. Said the family was handling the paperwork. My grandmother, he had exploited my grandmother's death to justify his deception. When did you begin working? 4 weeks ago. I've put in around 40 hours of effort, plus supplies. I'm in for $18,000 already. I took out my phone and showed him my act. This is the county record, with my name and property. I purchased it from my grandmother's estate 5 years ago. James gazed at the document. He said his grandmother just passed. She died 6 years ago. Jesus. Have you got the permits he showed you? James took out photocopies. I opened my laptop and logged into the county permit system, checking each number. These are bogus, I continued, and the permission numbers do not exist in the county database. How did he forge them? Probably got a template online, modified the numbers, and printed them. Most contractors do not check every permit number unless they have a cause to be suspicious. I verified the address, James responded defensively. And I confirmed the property exists. I didn't thought to check the permission numbers since why would someone go to such pains to falsify them? Because he's desperate, I said. Or compulsive, or both. I dug out further county documents and property tax payments, all of which were current and paid by me. I need to file a police report, James stated. You should. I'm going to file one too. After I spoke with my sister, James stared at me. She doesn't know. I do not think so. She appears genuinely pleased for him. Are you going to inform her that her spouse is a fraud? I'm going to show her the evidence and let her draw her own conclusions. James slumped back in his chair. You are a better guy than me. I would burn him down right away. Oh, I'm going to burn him down, I claimed. I'm just going to do it thoroughly. That night I called my sister. Hey, she said cheerfully. What's up? Can we have coffee? Just you and I. Sure. Is everything all right? I just need to talk to you about something. Pause. About Jackson. Yeah, Michael. If this is about the beach house, I know you're probably hurt that he didn't ask your opinion, but it's been sitting there for years. And Sophie, please just have coffee with me. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, tomorrow. Tomorrow. We met in a cafe halfway between her house and the city. She was dressed in athleisure and sunglasses, as if she had just finished yoga. You look stressed, she commented as she sat down. I am. What's happening? I took out my laptop. I need to show you something. I gave her the deed, county papers, tax payments, and 5 years of proof that I owned the beach house. She gazed at the screen. I do not comprehend. I purchased it from Grandma's estate 5 years ago. I have been renting it out seasonally. It's been generating revenue, but Jackson stated. Jackson lied. Her face turned pale. No, he said the family was handling the estate transfer, that it was complicated. There was no transfer. I purchased it outright in 2019. The estate was closed 7 months later. Everything has been settled for years. So why would he? I showed her the contractor's texts, photographs, and falsified permits. He used bogus papers to pay someone to refurbish a house he did not own. That contractor is 4 weeks into the project and Jackson owes him $18,000. Lauren's hands began trembling. This was a mistake. He probably just... Lauren, check the permission numbers. I examined them on the county's database. They do not exist. She glanced, and I saw her expression shift as realization sank in. How long did you know? She whispered. Since Dad's birthday party. The contractor phoned me that night, and you did not notify me. I needed proof first. I wanted to make sure I wasn't mistaken. Are you wrong? No. She rested her head on her hands. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Don't. Do not apologize. You did not do anything wrong. She glanced up, her eyes watering. What are you planning to do? I need to fill out a police report. The contractor has previously spoken to a detective. Lauren, this is fraud. It is a crime. He's my husband. I understand. We have 2 children. I know. She was weeping now, real tears. How could he do this? I do not know. Was it simply the beach home, or did he lie about other things? I hadn't considered that. I don't know. She took out her phone and looked through stuff. He stated he earned a promotion and his income was going up 6 months ago, but we never received the increased money. He stated that it was going into investments. What type of investments? He wouldn't offer me any specifics. Said it was complicated. Said I should trust him. Red flag. Big red flag. Lauren, you should speak with a lawyer, not necessary for divorce, but to protect yourself and your children financially. I can't believe this is happening. We sat there in quiet while she processed. Other customers came and went, the barista called out names, and life carried on around us while my sister's world fell apart. What will happen next? She finally asked. I'm going to submit a police report tonight. The detective will undoubtedly want to speak with Jackson. And the contractor will likely sue for payment. Can he go to jail? Possibly. Fraud, forgery, and stealing via deceit. It depends on how the DA intends to charge it. She wiped her eyes. Our kids. I know. Everyone's going to find out. Yeah. Dad will be devastated. Dad trusted Jackson's lies. That's not on you. She stared at me. Really? Really? Why didn't you speak out at the party when he was lying to everyone? Because I needed to be sure and because I wanted to give you a chance to hear it from me first. Thank you. You are my sister. She began weeping again. I really apologize for everything. For not inquiring about the house. For not checking with you. For simply presuming. You didn't know. But she should have. They all should have. They should have asked me, the quiet son and neglected sibling, if I had done anything with Grandma's house. They should have inquired who had been maintaining it and paying the taxes. They should have listened, but they didn't because Jackson was charming and confident, and he knew precisely what to say. And I was only Michael. I submitted the police report that night and Detective Sophie Hayes of the Property Fraud Section phoned me the next morning. Mr. Morrison, I studied your report and the supporting evidence you supplied. This is very obvious fraud. I'll need to interview Mr. Foster. He doesn't know I reported it yet. That is probably better. Can you come to the station this afternoon? I'd want to get your entire statement recorded. I spent 2 hours in the Riverside County Sheriff's Station going over everything with Detective Hayes, who was in his mid-50s and had been on the police for 22 years. He was patient and meticulous. Has Mr. Foster tried to contact you directly? She inquired. No, he does not know. I understand. And your sister? I told her 2 days ago. She's trying to process it. Has she confronted him? I do not know. I urged her to see a lawyer first. Detective Hayes made notes. We're going to execute a search warrant at his home, look for indications of fraudulent paperwork, communicate with the contractor, anything that demonstrates intent. When? Perhaps next week. I need to cooperate with the district attorney's office. How about the contractor, James Carter? He is pursuing a separate civil claim, but his evidence supports the criminal case. Forged permits alone are enough to warrant prosecution. I exited the station feeling odd, as if I had started something that I couldn't stop, which is precisely what I had done. 3 days later, my father phoned. Michael, what the heck is happening? What do you mean? Sophie called me, weeping, said something about Jackson, fraud, and the beach home. She was not making sense. I took a breath. Dad, I own the beachfront house. I purchased it from Grandma's estate 5 years ago. Jackson does not own it. He never did. Silence. He hired a contractor to renovate it with forged permits. The contractor is 4 weeks into the project, and Jackson has yet to pay him. I submitted a police report. There is an active inquiry. More silence. Dad, are you telling me Jackson lied at my birthday celebration in front of the entire family? Yes, and did you know? I found out that night. The contractor texted me during the party, and you didn't respond. I wanted to know all the facts first. I wanted to speak to Sophie quietly. I wanted to handle this properly. The proper approach would have been to expose him immediately, so that everyone could witness Sophie's humiliation in real time. That halted him. She's your daughter, I murmured gently. I protected her as much as I could. Another prolonged stillness. I can't believe this, he eventually said. Neither can I. What happens now? Police are conducting an investigation. The DA determines whether to file charges. The contractor sues. Jackson has to face the consequences. Number 4. Sophie is speaking with a lawyer about financial protection for herself and the children. Jesus Christ. Yeah. He hung up without saying goodbye. The search warrant was issued on a Tuesday morning, and Detective Hayes phoned me at 9:47 a.m. We carried out the warrant to Mr. Foster's house. He discovered the fake permission templates on his PC. Several drafts, email discussions with the contractor in which he expressly claimed ownership of the property. Mr. Morrison undoubtedly felt flipping the property would solve his money issues, but he doesn't own it, so it's fraud, not simply bad business. According to his financial records, he's $50,000 in debt on his credit cards. Is he under arrest? Not yet. We're putting together the case for the DA, but it's coming. I sat at my desk, phone glued to my ear, attempting to digest the number. $50,000 in debt. My sister had no idea, since her husband had been lying to her about everything. There's something else, Detective Hayes explained. What? We discovered evidence that he planned to take out a home equity loan against your house. He had loan applications filled up, falsified signatures, the full works. My stomach sank. He was going to take out a loan against a house he didn't own using forged documentation. Yes, that is felony fraud. There are multiple counts. When are you going to arrest him? DA is currently evaluating the case, probably by the end of the week. Lauren phoned me that night. They searched my house today. Her voice was flat and dead. I understand. Detective Hayes informed me. I discovered a whole folder on Jackson's PC. Plans, budgets, loan applications. All for your home. I'm sorry. Do not be. You did not do this. He did. She hesitated. Then the detective presented me the credit card statements, totaling $50,000. I had no idea. I thought we were okay. I thought we were saving for the children's college. What are you planning to do? I've already filed for legal separation. My lawyer advises I must protect myself and the children from his obligations. That's smart. Smart? She laughed cruelly. I married a con artist and didn't notice for 6 years. How is that smart? You're not responsible for his lies. Everyone thinks I knew. Dad, Mom, Uncle John. They all think I was in on it. Then they're idiots. She laughed again. This time it's genuine. Thanks. Do you need anything? No, I wanted you to know I'm handling it. I'm not going to fall apart. I know you won't. And Michael. Yeah? I'm sorry for not asking about the house, for not paying attention, for letting Jackson make you invisible. My throat clenched. You didn't. I did. We all did. And I'm sorry. The arrest happened on Friday. Detective Hayes phoned me at 2:13 p.m. Jackson Foster is in custody, multiple counts of fraud, forgery, attempted theft. DA's office is pretty confident about prosecution. Bail set at $55,000. His lawyers arguing for reduction. I considered the credit card debt, the falsehoods, and the desperate plot to seize my house. He won't make bail, I said. Probably not. The hearing occurred 3 weeks later. I sat at the rear of the courtroom and watched Jackson enter in an orange jumpsuit. He appeared smaller and deflated. The DA presented the case systematically, citing the fake permits, contractor fraud, attempted home equity fraud, and bank records indicating purpose. Jackson's public lawyer attempted to emphasize financial desperation, mitigating circumstances, and first-time offender status. The judge was not interested. "Mr. Foster, you did not simply conduct fraud. You committed intricate planned fraud that included falsification of government papers, defrauding a contractor, and attempting to take property via false methods. This shows a pattern of deception." Bail was rejected. The trial date has been scheduled roughly 3 months out. I exited the courthouse and saw my sister waiting by my car. "You came." I said I had to see it. She seemed weary. "Is it wrong that I feel relieved?" "No." The kids asked where Daddy is. I told them he made some bad choices and has to deal with the consequences. That's honest. "They're 8 and 6. They don't really understand." We stood in the courthouse parking lot. 2 people are attempting to figure out how to go forward. "What about the beach house?" she inquired. "What about it?" "The contractor. Did he get paid?" I settled with him, agreed to pay for the work since it needed to be done anyway. "He's finishing the deck and bathroom at cost." "That's generous." "He was a victim too." She nodded. "Are you going to sell it?" "No, I'm going to keep renting it. It's good income." "Jackson said you'd been wasting it, that it was just sitting there." "Jackson lied about everything." "Yeah." She stared at me. "I'm going to tell Dad the truth about how you bought it years ago. About how you've been managing it. About how you handled this whole thing to protect me." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. Because you're not invisible, Michael. And I'm done letting our family treat you like you are." The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Jackson accepted a plea agreement, 4 years of minimum security, compensation to James Carter, and a permanent restraining order from my property. My father phoned me the night the plea was revealed. "I owe you an apology," he stated without explanation. "Okay." "I believed Jackson because he was loud and confident. I ignored you because you were quiet. That was wrong." "Yeah. Your grandmother would have been proud of you for buying the house, for managing it well, for handling this situation with integrity." "Thanks, Dad. I'm proud of you too." "I should have said that years ago." "I didn't know what to say to that." "Anyway," he said hesitantly, "your mother and I want to have you over for dinner. Just you. Not a big family thing. Just us." "I'd like that." I drove to the beach home 7 months after Jackson was sentenced. James Carter had completed the improvements. Beautiful job. Just what the place needed. New deck, new bathroom, and freshly painted throughout. I stood on the balcony, watching the sunset turn the water orange and gold, reflecting on all that had transpired. Jackson had interpreted my quiet as weakness. My family had interpreted my silence as absence. They had all been mistaken. I acquired this house to preserve part of my grandmother's legacy. Because I realized that worth was not always obvious, and riches was not always spectacular. Jackson attempted to take it since he believed no one would notice. He'd also been mistaken about that. My phone vibrated. Sophie sent an SMS. "The divorce is final. Kids are doing okay. Starting therapy next week. Thank you for everything." I typed back. "You're going to be fine. I know because I have you." I put away my phone and gazed out at the lake. The house stood solidly behind me. Grandmother's residence. This is my house currently. Jackson intended to flip it for a quick profit to demonstrate his intelligence. Instead, he had shown his true self to everyone. And I'd accomplished it by just expressing the truth. There was no drama or spectacle, only paperwork and patience, and he let his own falsehoods ruin him. The sun slipped below the horizon. I shut the door and drove home, knowing that often the smallest triumphs are the most meaningful. "James Carter, we need to talk about Jackson Foster." My stomach sank. "What about him?" "He hired me to remodel your property claiming he owned it. I've been working for 4 weeks. He owes me $18,000, and he won't return my calls." I gazed at the message, reading it twice and 3 times. "Are you at the property now?" "No, but I can meet you tomorrow morning. I'm in the city." "Can you send me photos of the work and any contracts you signed?" 3 dots emerged, stopped, and reappeared. He said this was his family's beach house that he was handling the flip personally. "Are you telling me he doesn't own it?" "He's never owned it. Send me everything you have." The images started to arrive. Half of the new deck rails are installed. Bathroom fixtures are torn out and sitting in cartons. The walls are covered in fresh drywall compound. I had not authorized the work or approved the adjustments. Then came the contract. It had Jackson's signature, my property address, and fake permission numbers from the county. I knew they were fabricated because I had reviewed the county record system 2 months prior for my yearly property tax review. There had been no permits submitted. No improvements were approved. Jackson had used phony papers to engage a contractor to work on a residence he did not own, and now the contractor was 4 weeks into labor and supplies with no method of getting paid. I returned to the living room where Jackson was still holding court, lying, and convincing my family that he was a real estate expert. "Mr. Carter," I typed cautiously. "I'm the legal owner. I have the deed and county records to prove it. Jackson has defrauded you. I think you should contact the police." "Are you serious?" "Completely. I'm sorry this happened to you, but I never authorized any renovations, never hired you, and never agreed to pay for anything. This is fraud." "Jesus, do you have his address?" "I have the address where I'm supposed to send the invoice. Someplace in Riverside County. That was where Jackson and my sister lived. 20 minutes from here. Send me copies of everything I wrote. Every text, every email, every photo. I'll forward it to my attorney and we'll figure out next steps." He said the permits were approved. He showed me paperwork. It was forged. There was a prolonged pause. "I've been in construction for 12 years. I've seen some shady stuff. But this?" "Yeah." "What do you want me to do?" I considered that. Jackson is in the next room, enjoying my father's champagne, accepting congrats on a project that did not exist. About my sister who had no idea she was married to a con artist. My family has always preferred Jackson to me since he is charming and I am quiet. For now, document everything. I'll call you tomorrow. We'll figure this out. Okay. I walked back into the living room. Jackson was discussing his remodeling timeline to my cousin Marcus, who worked in commercial real estate and should have known better than to believe him at face value. "The bathroom is the key," Jackson said. "Buyers will pay premium for a good bathroom. I'm going luxury fixtures, heated floors, the works, heated floors in a beach house that would be used 3 months a year." My father drew my attention. "Michael, come tell Jackson about that investment property you looked at in Portland." I'd mentioned it at another family meal 7 months earlier. I was astonished that my father remembered. I stepped up, stood next to Jackson, and looked him in the eyes. "How's the renovation going?" I inquired politely. "Great," he said without hesitation. "Contractor's solid, works ahead of schedule." "That's unusual." "I know, right? Got lucky with this guy." "What's his name?" Jackson blinked. "Who?" "Your contractor." "Oh, James Carter. And he has taken responsibility." "Yeah, why?" I grinned. "Just curious. Contractors can be tough to manage." "Not this one. Professional operation." I nodded slowly. "Good to hear." My sister joined us and slipped her arm in Jackson's. "He's being modest. He's been so stressed about the permits and the timeline and making sure everything's up to code." "The permits came through." "Okay," I asked. Finally Jackson stated, "County took forever but yeah, everyone approved." "That's great. Which permits did you file?" He stared at me like I was speaking a different language. The standard ones. Building permit, electrical, plumbing, no structural." "The deck's not structural. It's a replacement." "County usually requires structural review for deck replacements, weight load calculations." Jackson's smile tightened. "My contractor handled it." "Huh, good contractor." My sister looked at me curiously. "Why all the questions?" "I'm just interested," I said. "Real estate stuff. You know me." She didn't recognize me. Neither of them did. They knew Quiet Michael, a software developer who rarely spoke at family gatherings. They were unaware of the rental income I had been quietly producing over the past 5 years. They had no idea I had been studying property law in my free time following several tenant issues. They had no idea I had a real estate attorney on retainer. They had absolutely no idea I was witnessing my brother-in-law conduct fraud in real time. I excused myself and proceeded to the restroom. I locked the door. Called Luke Marshall. He answered the second ring. "Michael, it's Saturday night. This better be good. My brother-in-law is renovating my beach house without my permission using forged permits." Silence. "Say that again." I detailed everything. The announcement, the contractor, the images, and the bogus permission numbers. Luke whistled softly. "That's fraud, like actual criminal fraud." "I know. Have you contacted the police?" Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. You need to file a report tonight, and you need to document everything, every conversation, every text, every photo that contractor sends you. What about my family? What about them? They think he's legitimate. My sister's married to him, Michael. Luke's voice became serious. He's committing fraud using your property. He's lying to a contractor. He's forging government documents. This isn't a family dispute. This is a crime. I know. So, what do you want to do? I glanced at myself in the mirror. Michael, be quiet. Michael was overlooked. Michael was a quiet person. I want to let him hang himself, I said. Luke was quiet for a minute. Meaning he's announced the flip publicly to my entire family. He's committed. He can't back out now without admitting he lied. Okay, I'm going to capture everything, let him continue talking. And when the time is right, I'm going to show everyone exactly who he is. That is hazardous. What if he does more damage to your property? The contractor is legitimate, he isn't going to ruin the place. In all honesty, the job probably needed to be done anyhow. I'll just make sure Jackson pays for it through legal means. Through legal means, Luke groaned. You are my client, therefore I will assist you. But Michael, take care. Family stuff becomes ugly, and this guy sounds anxious to pull off something this large. I'll be careful. I hung up and returned to the party where Jackson was showing someone images from his phone. Before shots, he explained. The place was a wreck. Has not been updated since the 1990s. In 2021, I plan to remodel the kitchen with new appliances, worktops, and backsplash. The photographs he showed were from an internet real estate ad for an entirely different house. This was not simply fraud, it was complex, intentional deception. I remained for an additional hour. My father patted Jackson on the back and said things like, "Always knew you had it in you, and that's how you build wealth." My sister glowed with reflected joy as I watched Jackson accumulate accolades like cash. Nobody asked me how I was doing, about my job, my life, or if I had lately visited the beach home. I was invisible as usual, which turned out to be just where I needed to be. 2 days later, I saw James Carter in a coffee shop in Riverside County. He was in his mid-40s, with aged hands and sad eyes, and he had a 6-inch thick file folder. I've been doing this for 12 years, he explained, laying paperwork across the table. I have dealt with homeowners, investors, and flippers. I thought I had seen everything. Tell me how he approached you. The job board advertising stated that he had inherited a family beach house and wanted to remodel it for sales. He showed me images, gave me the address, and stated he had the permits ready to go. I quoted him $25,000 for the deck, bathroom, and interior painting. He settled for $18,000. We shook hands. Did he show you the proof of ownership? He said his name wasn't on the deed yet since it was still in his grandmother's estate. Said the family was handling the paperwork. My grandmother. He had exploited my grandmother's death to justify his deception. When did you begin working? 4 weeks ago. I've put in around 40 hours of effort, plus supplies. I'm in for $18,000 already. I took out my phone and showed him my act. This is the county record with my name and property. I purchased it from my grandmother's estate 5 years ago. James gazed at the document. He said his grandmother just passed. She died 6 years ago. Jesus. Have you got the permits he showed you? James took out photocopies. I opened my laptop and logged into the county permit system, checking each number. These are bogus, I continued, and the permission numbers do not exist in the county database. How did he forge them? Probably got a template online, modified the numbers and printed them. Most contractors do not check every permit number unless they have a cause to be suspicious. I verified the address, James responded defensively, and I confirmed the property exists. I didn't thought to check the permission numbers since why would someone go to such pains to falsify them? Because he's desperate, I said. Or compulsive, or both. I dug out further county documents and property tax payments, all of which were current and paid by me. I need to file a police report, James stated. You should. I'm going to file one too. After I spoke with my sister, James stared at me. She doesn't know. I do not think so. She appears genuinely pleased for him. Are you going to inform her that her spouse is a fraud? I'm going to show her the evidence and let her draw her own conclusions. James slumped back in his chair. You are a better guy than me. I would burn him down right away. "Oh, I'm going to burn him down," I claimed. "I'm just going to do it thoroughly." That night I called my sister. "Hey," she said cheerfully. "What's up? Can we have coffee? Just you and I." "Sure. Is everything all right? I just need to talk to you about something." Pause. "About Jackson?" "Yeah, Michael. If this is about the beach house, I know you're probably hurt that he didn't ask your opinion, but it's been sitting there for years. And Sophie, please just have coffee with me." Another pause, longer this time. "Okay, tomorrow." "Tomorrow." We met in a cafe halfway between her house and the city. She was dressed in athleisure and sunglasses, as if she had just finished yoga. "You look stressed," she commented as she sat down. "I am. What's happening?" I took out my laptop. "I need to show you something." I gave her the deed, county papers, tax payments, and 5 years of proof that I owned the beach house. She gazed at the screen. "I do not comprehend. I purchased it from Grandma's estate 5 years ago. I have been renting it out seasonally. It's been generating revenue, but Jackson stated." "Jackson lied." Her face turned pale. "No. He said the family was handling the estate transfer. That it was complicated. There was no transfer. I purchased it outright in 2019. The estate was closed 7 months later. Everything has been settled for years. So why would he?" I showed her the contractor's texts, photographs, and falsified permits. He used bogus papers to pay someone to refurbish a house he did not own. That contractor is 4 weeks into the project and Jackson owes him $18,000. Lauren's hands began trembling. This was a mistake. He probably just... "Lauren, check the permission numbers. I examined them on the county's database. They do not exist." She glanced and I saw her expression shift as realization sank in. "How long did you know?" she whispered. "Since Dad's birthday party. The contractor phoned me that night, and you did not notify me. I needed proof first. I wanted to make sure I wasn't mistaken." "Are you wrong?" "No." She rested her head on her hands. "Oh my God. I'm sorry." Do not apologize. You did not do anything wrong." She glanced up, her eyes watering. "What are you planning to do?" "I need to fill out a police report. The contractor has previously spoken to a detective." "Lauren, this is fraud. It is a crime. He's my husband." "I understand. We have 2 children." "I know." She was weeping now, real tears. "How could he do this?" "I do not know. Was it simply the beach home, or did he lie about other things?" "I hadn't considered that." "I don't know." She took out her phone and looked through stuff. "He stated he earned a promotion and his income was going up 6 months ago, but we never received the increased money. He stated that it was going into investments." "What type of investments?" "He wouldn't offer me any specifics, said it was complicated, said I should trust him." Red flag. Big red flag. "Lauren, you should speak with a lawyer, not necessary for divorce but to protect yourself and your children financially. I can't believe this is happening." We sat there in quiet while she processed. Other customers came and went. The barista called out names, and life carried on around us while my sister's world fell apart. "What will happen next?" she finally asked. "I'm going to submit a police report tonight. The detective will undoubtedly want to speak with Jackson. And the contractor will likely sue for payment. Can he go to jail?" "Possibly. Fraud, forgery, and stealing via deceit. It depends on how the DA intends to charge it." She wiped her eyes. "Our kids." "I know. Everyone's gonna find out." "Yeah. Dad will be devastated. Dad trusted Jackson's lies." "That's not on you." She stared at me. "Really?" "Really." "Why didn't you speak out at the party when he was lying to everyone?" "Because I needed to be sure, and because I wanted to give you a chance to hear it from me first." "Thank you. You are my sister." She began weeping again. "I really apologize for everything. For not inquiring about the house. For not checking with you. For simply presuming. You didn't know." "But she should have. They all should have. They should have asked me, the quiet son and neglected sibling, if I had done anything with Grandma's house. They should have inquired who had been maintaining it and paying the taxes. They should have listened, but they didn't because Jackson was charming and confident, and he knew precisely what to say. And I was only Michael. I submitted the police report that night, and Detective Sophie Hayes of the Property Fraud Section phoned me the next morning. "Mr. Morrison, I studied your report and the supporting evidence you supplied. This is very obvious fraud. I'll need to interview Mr. Foster. He doesn't know I reported it yet." "That is probably better. Can you come to the station this afternoon? I'd want to get your entire statement recorded." I spent 2 hours in the Riverside County Sheriff's Station going over everything with Detective Hayes, who was in his mid-50s and had been on the police for 22 years. He was patient and meticulous. "Has Mr. Foster tried to contact you directly?" she inquired. "No, he does not know." "I understand. And your sister?" "I told her 2 days ago. She's trying to process it." "Has she confronted him?" "I do not know. I urged her to see a lawyer first." Detective Hayes made notes. "We're going to execute a search warrant at his home. Look for indications of fraudulent paperwork. Communicate with the contractor. Anything that demonstrates intent." "When?" "Perhaps next week. I need to cooperate with the district attorney's office." "How about the contractor, James Carter?" "He is pursuing a separate civil claim, but his evidence supports the criminal case. Forged permits alone are enough to warrant prosecution." I exited the station feeling odd, as if I had started something that I couldn't stop, which is precisely what I had done. 3 days later my father phoned. "Michael, what the heck is happening?" "What do you mean?" Sophie called me weeping. Said something about Jackson, fraud, and the beach home. She was not making sense. I took a breath. "Dad, I own the beachfront house. I purchased it from Grandma's estate 5 years ago. Jackson does not own it. He never did." Silence. "He hired a contractor to renovate it with forged permits. The contractor is 4 weeks into the project, and Jackson has yet to pay him. I submitted a police report. There is an active inquiry." More silence. "Dad, are you telling me Jackson lied at my birthday celebration in front of the entire family?" "Yes. And did you know?" "I found out that night. The contractor texted me during the party, and you didn't respond." "I wanted to know all the facts first. I wanted to speak to Sophie quietly. I wanted to handle this properly. The proper approach would have been to expose him immediately so that everyone could witness Sophie's humiliation in real time. That halted him." "She's your daughter," I murmured gently. "I protected her as much as I could." Another prolonged stillness. "I can't believe this," he eventually said. "Neither can I." What happens now? Police are conducting an investigation. The DA determines whether to file charges. The contractor sues. Jackson has to face the consequences. Number 4. Sophie is speaking with a lawyer about financial protection for herself and the children. Jesus Christ. Yeah, he hung up without saying goodbye. The search warrant was issued on a Tuesday morning, and Detective Hayes phoned me at 9:47 a.m. We carried out the warrant to Mr. Foster's house. He discovered the fake permission templates on his PC, several drafts, email discussions with the contractor in which he expressly claimed ownership of the property. Mr. Morrison undoubtedly felt flipping the property would solve his money issues, but he doesn't own it, so it's fraud, not simply bad business. According to his financial records, he's $50,000 in debt on his credit cards. Is he under arrest? Not yet. We're putting together the case for the DA, but it's coming. I sat at my desk, phone glued to my ear, attempting to digest the number. $50,000 in debt. My sister had no idea, since her husband had been lying to her about everything. "There's something else," Detective Hayes explained. "What?" "We discovered evidence that he planned to take out a home equity loan against your house. He had loan applications filled up, falsified signatures, the full works." My stomach sank. He was going to take out a loan against a house he didn't own using forged documentation. Yes, that is felony fraud. There are multiple counts. When are you going to arrest him? DA is currently evaluating the case, probably by the end of the week. Lauren phoned me that night. "They searched my house today." Her voice was flat and dead. "I understand." Detective Hayes informed me. "I discovered a whole folder on Jackson's PC. Plans, budgets, loan applications, all for your home." "I'm sorry." Do not be. You did not do this. He did. She hesitated. Then the detective presented me the credit card statements, totaling $50,000. I had no idea. I thought we were okay. I thought we were saving for the children's college. What are you planning to do? I've already filed for legal separation. My lawyer advises I must protect myself and the children from his obligations. That's smart. Smart. She laughed cruelly. I married a con artist and didn't notice for 6 years. How is that smart? You're not responsible for his lies. Everyone thinks I knew. Dad, Mom, Uncle John, they all think I was in on it. Then they're idiots. She laughed again. This time it's genuine. Thanks. Do you need anything? No, I wanted you to know I'm handling it. I'm not going to fall apart. I know you won't. And Michael? Yeah? I'm sorry for not asking about the house, for not paying attention, for letting Jackson make you invisible. My throat clenched. You didn't. I did. We all did. And I'm sorry. The arrest happened on Friday. Detective Hayes phoned me at 2:13 p.m. Jackson Foster is in custody. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery, attempted theft. DA's office is pretty confident about prosecution. Bail set at $55,000. His lawyers arguing for reduction. I considered the credit card debt, the falsehoods, and the desperate plot to seize my house. He won't make bail, I said. Probably not. The hearing occurred 3 weeks later. I sat at the rear of the courtroom and watched Jackson enter in an orange jumpsuit. He appeared smaller and deflated. The DA presented the case systematically, citing the fake permits, contractor fraud, attempted home equity fraud, and bank records indicating purpose. Jackson's public lawyer attempted to emphasize financial desperation, mitigating circumstances, and first-time offender status. The judge was not interested. Mr. Foster, you did not simply conduct fraud. You committed intricate planned fraud that included falsification of government papers, defrauding a contractor, and attempting to take property via false methods. This shows a pattern of deception. Bail was rejected. The trial date has been scheduled roughly 3 months out. I exited the courthouse and saw my sister waiting by my car. You came? I said I had to see it. She seemed weary. Is it wrong that I feel relieved? No. The kids asked where Daddy is. I told them he made some bad choices and has to deal with the consequences. That's honest. They're 8 and 6. They don't really understand. We stood in the courthouse parking lot. 2 people are attempting to figure out how to go forward. What about the beach house? She inquired. What about it? The contractor, did he get paid? I settled with him, agreed to pay for the work since it needed to be done anyway. He's finishing the deck and bathroom at cost. That's generous. He was a victim too. She nodded. Are you going to sell it? No, I'm going to keep renting it. It's good income. Jackson said you'd been wasting it, that it was just sitting there. Jackson lied about everything. Yeah. She stared at me. I'm going to tell Dad the truth about how you bought it years ago. About how you've been managing it. About how you handled this whole thing to protect me. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because you're not invisible, Michael. And I'm done letting our family treat you like you are. The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Jackson accepted a plea agreement. 4 years of minimum security, compensation to James Carter, and a permanent restraining order from my property. My father phoned me the night the plea was revealed. I owe you an apology, he stated without explanation. Okay. I believed Jackson because he was loud and confident. I ignored you because you were quiet. That was wrong. Yeah, your grandmother would have been proud of you for buying the house, for managing it well, for handling this situation with integrity. Thanks, Dad, I'm proud of you too. I should have said that years ago. I didn't know what to say to that. Anyway, he said hesitantly. Your mother and I want to have you over for dinner. Just you, not a big family thing. Just us. I'd like that. I drove to the beach home 7 months after Jackson was sentenced. James Carter had completed the improvements. Beautiful job. Just what the place needed. New deck, new bathroom, and freshly painted throughout. I stood on the balcony, watching the sunset turn the water orange and gold, reflecting on all that had transpired. Jackson had interpreted my quiet as weakness. My family had interpreted my silence as absence. They had all been mistaken. I acquired this house to preserve part of my grandmother's legacy. Because I realized that worth was not always obvious, and riches was not always spectacular. Jackson attempted to take it since he believed no one would notice. He'd also been mistaken about that. My phone vibrated. Sophie sent an SMS. The divorce is final, kids are doing okay, starting therapy next week, thank you for everything. I typed back. You're going to be fine, I know because I have you. I put away my phone and gazed out at the lake. The house stood solidly behind me. Grandmother's residence. This is my house currently. Jackson intended to flip it for a quick profit to demonstrate his intelligence. Instead, he had shown his true self to everyone, and I'd accomplished it by just expressing the truth. There was no drama or spectacle, only paperwork and patience, and he let his own falsehoods ruin him. The sun slipped below the horizon. I shut the door and drove home, knowing that often the smallest triumphs are the most meaningful. My sister offered me $60,000 to donate my eye. When I refused, she called me manipulative. I took revenge by revealing her career lies to her manager. In February, my sister Samantha demanded I donate my cornea to her daughter Ella, who required a transplant after an illness. I was sorry to learn about Ella's health and inquired why Samantha wasn't giving, considering she was the mother and greatest match. Samantha chuckled and explained she was a professional model who needed both eyes while I programmed from home. Lost vision in one eye wouldn't affect my income. Me being the donor made sense since she stated my appearance didn't matter for my profession, but her face was her livelihood. I told her it was absurd and she couldn't ask me to give up my cornea because her eyes were more precious. She claimed I was selfish since Ella was young and had her whole life ahead, while I was 40 and unmarried and didn't need flawless vision to attract anybody. She claimed one eye would be enough for my lifestyle as I looked at computer displays all day. Samantha called me daily to argue why I should give instead of her after I declined. She stated photoshoots required depth awareness, while coders could use one eye. She said she had contracts requiring her to look well, but I did not. She stated her spouse would leave her if she had face operations, but I had no audience. She stated losing one eye wouldn't matter because people knew I used glasses and my eyes weren't flawless. Samantha persuaded our mother to pressure me by March. Mom called to tell Samantha's modeling business supported her family, while I simply had myself to worry about. Ella would be heartbroken to witness her mother's profession end when there was an easy remedy. She told me to consider what was best for the family rather than being adamant about something unimportant. Mom stated she was too old to donate her cornea then and might not be a suitable match. Next, our father joined the effort, stating I needed to stand up as an aunt as Samantha had sacrificed so much as a mother. Samantha's nanny housekeeper and limited time with Ella between modeling assignments made me wonder what sacrifices she made. He said I was being tough to upset Samantha, who had always envied me. He indicated guys weren't good fits for little girls when I inquired if he'd donate his cornea. Samantha's husband James texted me headlines about one-eyed persons living regular lives. He stated hundreds survived and I was overreacting. He offered me $60,000 for my cornea as a company. When I replied no amount of money would make me give up my body parts for someone who wouldn't, he called me greedy and claimed I was pricing Ella's vision. I told him Samantha was pricing it by not donating. The persecution escalated when Samantha informed Ella Aunt Rachel wouldn't help her sight again. Ella sent me tearful voicemails wondering why I didn't assist her. Samantha advised her to claim mother needed her eyes for work, but Aunt Rachel worked on computers all day. An 8-year-old was guilt-tripping me because her mother was too vain to give her cornea. My patience ran out, so I showed everyone how selfish Samantha was. I phoned Samantha's modeling agency to talk to her manager. I explained and asked if Samantha would lose contracts for donating a cornea to her kid. The manager said, "Of course not. That would be discrimination, and no client would punish a mother for helping her sick child." In fact, she said it would probably generate positive publicity and show Samantha as a devoted mother. She was appalled that Samantha was using her career to pressure others. The manager phoned Samantha immediately to say the agency approved her giving to Ella and would accommodate any recuperation time. She was also unhappy that Samantha lied about job concerns to avoid aiding her daughter. Samantha yelled at me for ruining everything. I hung up on Samantha and remained shocked for many minutes. My hands shook as I placed the phone on my desk. My suspicions were validated by the modeling agency manager. Samantha lied about professional concerns to avoid cornea donation. Instead of being embarrassed of herself, she was upset at me for exposing her selfishness. I looked at my PC without noticing my pre-call code. I had trouble breathing and my chest was constricted. She believed my phoning her agency wrecked everything. Not that she wrecked everything by not helping her daughter. Not that she spent weeks manipulating and pressing me, but that I was the problem for discovering the truth. My phone buzzed non-stop 20 minutes later. Samantha's texts flooded my screen. She called me spiteful and accused me of undermining her agency connection. She stated I ruined her career behind her back instead of donating discreetly like a sister. As each message arrived, my rage grew. Her priorities were clear in every communication. Only Ella's job, attractiveness and reputation, not her vision or motherhood. I screenshotted every communication. Her wrath revealed her true self to everyone. She sent 12 furious SMS in the first hour. "I've always envied her success," she remarked. She stated I couldn't tolerate that she was gorgeous and renowned and I was a nothing coder. She stated I wanted to injure her because I was annoyed by my monotonous existence. That night at 7 o'clock my phone rang. The screen displayed James's name. Something compelled me to answer. The tone of his voice was very different from his commercial proposals. He sounded worn out. Before the manager phoned Samantha, he didn't know she lied about the agency's stance. It was his belief that career repercussions existed. He inquired whether I was satisfied after embarrassing his wife. I assured him Ella may receive the cornea from her mother. His silence was lengthy. He then reported Samantha had closed herself in their bedroom and refused to communicate. Not my problem to repair. He groaned and hung up without saying goodbye. I phoned Olivia after speaking with James. Second ring, she took up. I recounted the past month to her. Samantha calls regularly with fresh donation motives. Father and mother joining pressure campaign. James offers $60,000 for cornea. Ella's Samantha coached weeping voicemails, calling the modeling agency and discovering Samantha lied the whole time. Olivia was quiet as I spoke. She was shocked when I finished that they tried to tell me my eyes were less useful since I'm a coder. She said I need flawless eyesight for coding as much as Samantha does for modeling. Maybe more considering I deal with tiny writing on screens all day. She called the family pressure campaign insane and wrong. Olivia asked Samantha why she was so hesitant to donate if the organization guaranteed no professional penalties. I realized I didn't know Samantha's underlying issue beyond vanity and face surgery concern. Olivia said Samantha may have underlying worries about medical procedures and was hiding behind career justifications, or that she used modeling as a barrier. After hanging up, I contemplated that. Samantha seemed less like a monster, but that didn't justify manipulating me into surgery. My mom contacted 4 days after the agency confrontation. Her voice was hesitant and distinct from her earlier pressure. She confirmed the incident with Samantha's manager. She regretted pushing me so hard when Samantha lied to us. She apologized for not believing me about Samantha being selfish. Her apologies sounded more like she regretted backing the wrong horse. Not sorry she pressured me to donate a bodily part. Not sad she valued Samantha's profession and attractiveness above mine. Sorry Samantha lied and embarrassed her. I informed my mom her apologies didn't fix the issue. She believed she could pressure me to donate despite Samantha's falsehoods. She thought Samantha's profession and attractiveness mattered more. She considered my physiological autonomy optional for familial convenience. Mom on the other line fell silent. She said to consider what I said. She hung up without saying goodbye. Sitting with my phone, I felt empty. Part of me wanted her to comprehend. I suspected she would never. Dad phoned the next day. His tone was defensive from the outset. He felt I was too hard on my mom, who was helping Ella. Samantha's job explanation deceived the family, he said. I punished them for trusting her. I explained that they trusted her because it matched their vision. My needs are less important than Samantha's. Her career matters more than mine. That her looks trumps mine. Dad became mad and said I was distorting things. He stated they wanted Ella's finest. How come I had to decide what was best for Ella instead of her mother? That stumped him. Samantha didn't call me for a week after the agency incident. James occasionally texted updates. Samantha met with the transplant coordinator to evaluate donors. Her medical exams were underway. She discussed the operation with the surgical team. He never faulted Samantha. I never received an apology for his pressure. He apologized for the issue getting out of hand in his messages. Like this was an accident rather than a plan to force me into surgery. Thomas Clark of the transplant facility called me Thursday morning. He asked whether I would be considered as a backup donor if Samantha wasn't right for Ella. They astonished me by contacting me. I asked Samantha if wanted it. Thomas said identifying backup donors was normal. Before the pressure campaign, Samantha submitted documents with my name weeks before asking me. She thought I'd agree if she pressed hard enough. She listed my name like my body belonged to the family. I asked Thomas to give me time to consider the backup donor. I could take as long as I needed to feel comfortable with my choice, he added. I liked his calm, professional voice throughout the interview after weeks of family members yelling at me. Long after we hung up, I stared at my phone. The realization hit me hard. Samantha put my name on the forms weeks ago when she launched her pressure campaign. She never requested a backup donor evaluation. She thought I'd cave if she pressed hard enough. She regarded my body like family property she could claim anytime she needed. Despite being enraged for weeks, the assumption made me furious again. She filled up formal medical documents with my details before talking to me since she was so confident in her abilities to deceive me. Olivia brought neighborhood bakery coffee and cakes Saturday afternoon. I told her everything about Thomas's call and the backup donor on my couch. I told her my conflicting feelings and she listened quietly. I wanted to assist Ella, a youngster stuck in adult troubles, but I worried that being backup would show my family's influence succeeded. Olivia suggested something I hadn't considered. Only if Samantha couldn't contribute medically would I donate. It wasn't like being first or having my family force me to get surgery. I wouldn't have to give if Samantha donated properly. Though that made logic, I felt odd about the circumstance. Olivia stated that was usual considering my family's treatment for 3 months. She advised me to see a professional therapist about processing everything since family manipulation campaigns weren't typical life experiences that friends could help with. I looked for family dynamics and boundary therapists online on Sunday. Most of the websites were generic and useless, however Miriam Shepard's description addressed helping with individuals struggling with familial pressure and guilt. Her office was 20 minutes from my flat. I briefly told her I needed aid with a delicate family matter with medical pressure Monday morning. She was available the following Thursday, so I scheduled it. I'd never been to therapy. My family always thought therapy was for others. However, this terrible issue made me rethink every familial bond, and I wanted someone impartial to assist me deal through it. I drove to Miriam's office Thursday afternoon, worried about therapy. Her waiting room included nice music and comfy chairs. When she summoned me back to her office, she appeared normal, not frightening. She asked me what brought me in, so I explained cornea donation demand. When I started talking, everything came out. Samantha's first call, the daily pressure campaign, my mother's calls about family commitments, my father's jealously charges, James's $60,000 offer, Ella's coached guilt messages, the modeling agency showdown, and now the backup donor dilemma. Miriam probed my childhood and Samantha connection. I noticed trends I hadn't seen before answering. Samantha was always attractive and started modeling at 12. Our parents protected her modeling career like a treasure. I was brilliant, received high marks, and studied computer science in college. Everyone expected me to be independent and prioritize Samantha's needs. I was supposed to comprehend why Samantha robbed my education cash for modeling portfolios. I wasn't allowed to protest when Samantha wanted our parents' attention for auditions and photo shoots. I accepted the pattern as regular family relations for decades. Miriam utilized parentification in reverse, a new phrase. Parentification usually requires older kids to care for younger siblings. However, my family asked me to suffer for my younger sister since her needs were prioritized above mine. I was responsible and didn't need anything. But Samantha was exceptional and required everything. Miriam noted my refusal of the contribution requirement was healthy self-preservation, not greed like my family alleged. She emphasized that I'd always accepted Samantha's needs over mine. Finally saying no helped me appreciate myself. I startled myself by sobbing in her office. Despite the pressure and manipulation, I didn't cry. Sitting there hearing someone support my sentiments and limits cracked something loose. I realized I'd spent 40 years thinking being a good sister and daughter meant shrinking to make Samantha bigger. Miriam gave me Kleenex and said we had a lot to go through, but she was delighted I came in. We made another appointment next week. James began contacting me regarding Samantha's transplant center exam 2 weeks after the modeling agency fight. He stated the day-long assessment included various scans and procedures. Samantha was nervous about all the medical things and kept asking how long it would take. The tone of his communication suggested I should reply with pity or encouragement. Each text was read and I put my phone down without responding. I wasn't ready to comfort someone who'd spent a month manipulating me into surgery. Samantha chose to give and now faced the medical process. My sympathies was exhausted after what she'd done. James sent another text that evening claiming Samantha was fatigued from testing. I remained silent. He could reassure his wife about her choices. Thomas Clark contacted me Tuesday morning with Samantha's assessment findings. Unlike our previous talk, his voice was more guarded. Samantha's examination showed early-stage keratoconus in her other eye. I asked what that meant because I didn't know anything about eye issues. He explained keratoconus as corneal thinness and bulging. Samantha's early-stage mild illness making her a less appropriate donor than predicted. She could donate to Ella, but surgery and post-op problems were increased. The transplant team wanted to evaluate me as a backup after this discovery. They needed a robust backup donor in case Samantha's operation or recuperation went poorly. Hearing the news caused a complex combination of emotions. I felt justified that Samantha wasn't the wonderful donor she thought she was when she said her eyes were better than mine. But worry returned that I might get involved. I had worked hard to keep my boundaries, but now I might need to contribute for medical reasons. I informed Thomas I needed 48 hours to decide on backup assessment. That was good, and I could call him when I was ready. After we hung up, I contacted Miriam's office to request an emergency phone session. Her receptionist suggested Miriam call that afternoon. I conveyed the change to Miriam at 3 using Samantha's evaluation scores. She asked me how I felt about being a backup donor now that there was a medical purpose rather than family pressure. Yes, I was puzzled and guilty. Miriam helped me separate Ella's medical requirements from my family's manipulation throughout the last months. She said I could assist Ella without believing my family's tale that I had to be the first donor. I would choose backup evaluation for my own reasons, not under compulsion. That distinction seemed crucial. I didn't give in to familial pressure. I was deciding whether to help my niece. I recapped everything with Olivia that night. She inquired about my intentions. Leave family conflict and strain behind. After thinking about it, I wanted to help Ella if Samantha couldn't give properly. Ella was innocent and deserved her eyesight restored, but I had to do it on my own, not because my family pressured me. Olivia thought it was a good idea and asked for my terms. I deliberated. I stressed that I was doing this for Ella, not because I agreed with my family that my body parts were negotiable. I wanted everyone to realize that giving was my decision, not something I should have done sooner. Olivia thought those were appropriate limits. She noted that I'd previously shown I could resist family pressure by refusing for 2 months. Accepting backup assessment didn't remove or invalidate that boundary setting. I phoned Thomas Wednesday morning to say I'd proceed with backup donor evaluation, but I stressed that I was doing it for Ella, not my family. I also mentioned that if I had to contribute, it would be my decision, and I wouldn't let people say I was finally coming around or doing what I should have done. Thomas Clark stated he understood and will register my complaints. He set my evaluation sessions for the next week and provided me testing instructions. After hanging up, I felt weirdly peaceful about the decision. I chose based on my ideals and reasons, not familial pressure. That felt distinct from anything else. Evening call from Mom. She seemed relieved when I replied. She thanked me for being reasonable after James informed her I'd back up donor assessment. I interrupted her story. I clearly said that I wasn't being rational or agreeing with them. Choosing to aid my niece was different than giving in to familial pressure. I assured her that I would donate because I wanted to help Ella, not because the family manipulation campaign worked. My mother grew silent on the other end. She responded quietly that she recognized my difference. She seemed saddened, but maybe she understood this time. She was delighted I was willing to be examined as backup and hoped Samantha's donation went well so I wouldn't have to. I felt exhausted but stronger when we hung up without family chit-chat. Despite helping, I kept my limits, felt progress. I checked in at the main desk the next week at the medical center. My receptionist gave me a clipboard with medical history and health status paperwork. I answered dozens of questions on surgeries, meds, family health, and smoking drinking. After submitting the papers, a nurse phoned me and brought me through a maze of halls to the ophthalmology department. After checking my blood pressure and temperature, she led me to the first testing room. The eye exams were different from my normal vision checks. The technician put my head in a tunnel-like contraption. Lighting flashed and equipment made frightening noises. She said they mapped my corneas to look for anomalies. Next was a contraption that captured back-of-eye photos using drops that blurred everything for 20 minutes. The technician specifically inquired about my computer use and headaches and eye strain. Even though no one was scrutinizing me, I felt unusually protective about my screen time as I detailed my dual-monitor work setup and regular breaks. Blood testing in the lab down the hall followed, where the phlebotomist filled a dozen vials for compatibility screens and health indicators. The ophthalmologist saw me after testing. In her computer review, she indicated my corneal thickness was great. For someone who spent so much time on screens, my eye health was excellent, and I would be a good donor. She stressed the if, saying Samantha was still the main donor and I was backup. After weeks of my family saying Samantha's eyesight was more essential, seeing her say my eyes were great made me feel weirdly validated. I was warned of infection, eyesight abnormalities, and healing issues if I donated. She said cornea donation was safe, but I needed to know what I was signing up for. I signed permission documents recognizing hazards and left the hospital fatigued after hours of testing. I got more blood tests and a surgical team consultation the following week. I signed in at the front desk and read an eye health magazine in the waiting area. Samantha was heading through the entryway with James behind her when I looked up. Her face tightened as she looked down at her phone as we met across the room. James offered an uneasy nod, like he wanted to recognize me but wasn't sure whether he could. Neither came over to greet me or inquire about my evaluation. Samantha took a seat across the waiting area from me with her back to me. James glanced over to approach, but Samantha grabbed his arm and muttered something to keep him still. A sense of anxiety permeated the room. Other patients may be curious about our drama. I rose up and crossed the corridor when the nurse called my name. James offered another awkward nod as Samantha stared at her phone. Without speaking to them, I followed the nurse to my appointment, leaving them in that horrible stillness. Tom phoned me at work the next week. He read my test findings with a professional yet kind voice. He said my corneal thickness was perfect. My blood testing was flawless for transplant compatibility and my eyes were okay. He thought I was a better fit for Ella than Samantha because of my eye health and lack of corneal indicators. He swiftly emphasized that Samantha was still a good donor and the medical team was proceeding with her. The family and medical team would decide which donor to employ based on medical criteria and family choices. He inquired whether I had any findings or procedural queries. Asked why I was a better fit than Samantha, he said my corneas were thicker and healthier, which improved results. He said Samantha may donate well, but if we were comparing the two alternatives medically, I would be better. After we hung up, I stared at my computer screen without seeing the code. Samantha called me 2 days later. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Before I finished greeting her, her voice was tight and aggressive. She stated Thomas Clark told her I was a better fit than her and asked whether I was delighted. I told her I didn't like this predicament she created, but I was glad Ella had good transplant possibilities. Samantha stated the doctors were still utilizing her cornea and she was having surgery in 4 weeks, daring me to fight. I liked that, and Ella was blessed to have her mother support her. Samantha's respiration was audible as the connection fell quiet. Her tone changed totally, bleeding fury into sheer fear. She said she was afraid about the surgery since she had never had surgery before and thought someone cutting into her eye made her sick. Over the previous week she experienced panic attacks about it, waking up gasping in the night. She couldn't sleep and had dreams of the procedure going wrong. She spoke like a real person for the first time in months, not the manipulative person who had harassed me since February. Despite all, I felt small pity. Recognizing medical procedure fear was real. I assured Samantha her concern was reasonable and understandable. Many individuals are afraid of surgery, especially eye surgery, which requires awareness. I advised she discuss anxiety treatment with the surgical team, such as pre-procedure medicine or relaxation exercises. Her silence was followed by a whispered request to be the donor as I was a better match. My number was solid. After refusing to contribute, she spent weeks attempting to get me to have surgery. Now she had to live with her choices. I wasn't going to save her from a predicament she made because she was terrified. Her dread was real, but it didn't modify her actions or require me to have surgery. Again, Samantha's voice strained. She felt I punished her by forcing surgery when there was a better choice. She accused me of being vengeful and exploiting the circumstance to get back at her for everything. I patiently stated that I wasn't forcing her. Ella's mother had caused this predicament by valuing her appearance over her daughter's health. She would give since the doctor said she could. She was afraid, but weeks of harassment and manipulation remained. My phone died after she hung up. I put my phone on the kitchen counter and felt exhausted, like the chat had drained me. Dad phoned the next day. He spoke in such tone when he was going to lecture me on family responsibilities. He stated Samantha was having a breakdown about the procedure and I should give. He repeated his points from weeks earlier about me being unmarried with no one to impress and my career not dependent on my beauty. He stated programmers didn't require flawless eyesight like models and losing one eye wouldn't harm my lifestyle. I stopped him off and informed him his arguments were insulting the first time and didn't improve by repeating them. Despite being unmarried and working from home, My body wasn't negotiable. I told my dad Samantha spent weeks saying the procedure would ruin her modeling career. After the agency determined that was a fraud, she said she was too terrified to proceed. I acknowledged her medical procedure phobia. Her worry didn't force me to get surgery. Like Ella's mother, moms have to do terrifying things for their kids. He said I had changed since this began and was harsh and cold-hearted. He stated I used to be understanding and eager to help family when I inquired what changed. Now I prioritized my comfort over my niece and sister. I informed him I was prioritizing my body autonomy over my family's demand to get surgery, which was different. After much argument, he hung up in frustration. I scheduled a week later meeting with Miriam. In her office, I informed her my father's assertion that I had changed. I worried he was correct when she asked me what I thought. I may have been cold-hearted by not helping when I was the better donor. Miriam leaned forward and said something that solidified everything. She said I hadn't changed. I stopped putting others' comfort above mine. This boundary setting upset my family's routine of prioritizing Samantha's needs. Because I usually did what they asked, people saw my self-protection as being tough or frigid. While pondering her statements, I realized she was accurate. My family's discomfort with my boundaries didn't mean the boundaries were wrong. It meant the old dynamic was unhealthy and they didn't like having to adjust. Maintaining these limits means admitting that some family ties may not return. My father may always remember me as the unpleasant daughter who rejected help. Samantha may never forgive me for not saving her from her decisions, but protecting myself was worth it. James texted me a week before Samantha's surgery to meet for coffee. I gazed at the message for a few minutes, uncertain if I wanted to sit down with someone who'd tried to buy my cornea like a used car part. Yet his tone was different from his forceful messages weeks before. I suggested we meet in a coffee shop between our neighborhoods. He looked unfamiliar when I entered and saw him at a corner table. With black bags under his eyes and unkempt hair, James looked like he hadn't slept in days. I noticed him standing with a weary smile that didn't reach his eyes. After ordering beverages, we sat awkwardly before he started chatting. He said the preceding 2 months had been awful at home. Ella continued asking questions they couldn't answer, worsening Samantha's concern before the procedure. The 8-year-old didn't understand why the adults fought when they tried to help her see better. James took 2 hands to his face and claimed he was fatigued from handling Samantha's panic attacks and keeping Ella from feeling guilty for the family quarrel. I was surprised by his next move. He apologized for pressing me, noting the $60,000 offer. He took the issue like a business discussion where money could repair everything, thinking like a problem solver to find a solution everyone could accept. He was visibly uneasy as he realized he'd been wrong to sell my body. His apology was more sincere than my parents' since he took responsibility for specific acts rather than making general, "sorry you feel that way" comments. I thanked him for his apologies and said it indicated he recognized his mistake. While drinking coffee, I wondered about something upsetting me. I asked James why Samantha was so opposed to the operation beyond fear given the medical risks were low and recovery was expected to be short. He paused, peering into his coffee cup as if the solution was there. Then he said something unexpected. Samantha had always feared altering her look, even momentarily. Not only modeling career worried, but horribly afraid he didn't understand. Since she started modeling at 12, she'd defined herself as gorgeous. He couldn't see how face surgery, especially little eye surgery without scars, damaged her sense of self. James tried to talk to her about it, but she became defensive and stated it was about her profession, which was easier to fight about than admitting she was afraid of losing her only asset. His answer clarified Samantha's psychology without condoning her conduct. I informed James that Samantha's identity troubles and worries didn't excuse family pressure, and Ella guilt-tripping me into surgery. He nodded and agreed that Samantha's motivation didn't excuse her actions. I suggested that this event may help Samantha appreciate her worth beyond her beauty. James nodded regretfully and hoped so. But he didn't think Samantha would learn anything. He stated his wife blamed others when things went wrong, instead of evaluating her own conduct, and today was no different. After coffee, James thanked me for meeting him. I understood the whole problem better as we exited the coffee shop, but I was still irritated about how it happened. Mom phoned 3 days before Samantha's operation to ask me to family dinner at her place. I rejected quickly, not wanting to eat awkwardly with everyone like the last months hadn't happened. However, my mother stated Ella would be there and wanted to see me. She stated my niece constantly requesting Aunt Rachel to visit again. Lacking the will to punish Ella for her mother's actions bound me. This was for Ella, so I came. I knew it would be awkward, but I wanted to stay in touch with my niece throughout this adult struggle. I could almost taste the tension when I arrived at my folks' place that evening. Nobody mentioned corneas, surgeries, or the months-long family battle because everyone was too polite. Ella came up and grabbed me when I entered, placing her little arms around my waist. With her impaired vision, she inquired whether I was still furious with Mommy. I crouched beside her and informed her that grown-ups often disagree on important matters. But I loved her. And none of this was her fault. That explanation satisfied her, so she drew me into the living room to show me a new toy. Dinner and everyone's phony friendliness were awful. My father inquired about my work in a really inquisitive manner, as if to show he cared about my profession. Mom continued offering me more food and asking whether I was comfortable. Samantha pushed food about her plate and answered questions in small phrases across from me without looking at me. James attempted to keep the subject safe with weather and local news. Ella spoke enthusiastically about school, unaware of the stress. Ella invited me into her room after supper to see her artwork. We were sitting on her bedroom floor when she begged me in a whisper if I would give her my eye because Mother was worried. I was surprised she knew these information and wondered what she overheard or Samantha told her. I gently emphasized that Mother would be courageous and help her, and that being brave sometimes includes doing things when we're terrified. Ella nodded genuinely and stated she was frightened about surgery. I told her it's normal to be afraid of things we don't comprehend. She appeared happy and showed me sketches of her returning vision following surgery. The photographs showed her seeing brightly colored flowers, butterflies, and family faces. Looking at these optimistic drawings from a youngster manipulated by adults broke my heart. Samantha quickly caught me as I pulled on my jacket near the front entrance after the family supper. She apologized for everything. Her apology was hasty and awkward, with words falling over each other like she'd prepared them but didn't mean them. I could see she was told to apologize rather than comprehending her mistake. Like a performer, she kept looking toward the living room where everyone was. I thanked her for apologizing but didn't say I forgave her, and her expression clenched in disappointment. She expected me to accept and return to our typical family dynamic quickly. She left without saying a word when I didn't satisfy her. James contacted me the day before Samantha's surgery that she was at the hospital for pre-op appointments and instructed him to inform me of the 8:00 a.m. operation. I thanked you for the update and wished Ella a smooth ride. No personal well wishes for Samantha were intentional, and James wasn't shocked. He replied with a thumbs up and promised to inform me after surgery. I couldn't focus on my coding the day Samantha had surgery. I checked my phone every few minutes for updates, even though I told myself I didn't care about Samantha. James texted around midday that Samantha was recovering after surgery. Once Ella was ready and the cornea was viable, the operation would happen tomorrow. I was relieved for Ella and confused about Samantha. I was delighted she did it so Ella could obtain medical attention. However, the months of manipulation, familial pressure, and guilt for preserving my body left me enraged. Samantha did what she should have done from the start, yet she still inflicted harm by avoiding it. James sent me Ella's transplant operation updates the next morning. The surgical team appeared optimistic when they returned her to the operating room at 8:30. I looked at my phone for a moment before saying I hoped things went well. Another SMS arrived at 10 o'clock saying the procedure was going well and the surgeons liked the cornea. Despite trying to concentrate, I checked my phone every few minutes. James updated at 11:30 that they were completing, and the surgical team said everything went well. Knowing Ella will finally have her vision repair made me feel relieved. Just before midday, Ella received the last SMS confirming her recovery and good visual prognosis. The transplant worked, although she needed weeks of special eye medications and limited exercise. I instantly replied that I was delighted she was okay and hoped her rehabilitation went well. James thanked me and promised to update me on her development. 3 days later, my mother called with that tone that signaled she wanted something from me. She asked how I was doing and spoke about the weather before explaining why she was calling. She stated Samantha's recuperation was harder than planned, with pain and concern about mending. Samantha is emotionally struggling and needs family support, she said. The inference was clear without her saying so. Her voice indicated that she expected me to volunteer to visit or contact Samantha to check on her. I inhaled and informed my mother that Samantha had James, the babysitter, and both her parents close. I said she had enough of recovery support. My mother paused before stating that family support was different, and Samantha was struggling. I told her I wouldn't console someone who hadn't recognized her months of harm. My mother groaned and said she understood, but she disagreed with me. After that, she awkwardly hung up. 2 weeks following both procedures, my mother called again to arrange lunch. Her request was for just us and no relatives. She claimed she'd been thinking about my response to her apologies and wanted to talk about our family dynamics. My mother never had long emotional talks about family dynamics, so I was suspicious. However, her voice was less defensive and more hesitant this time. I agreed to meet her at a nearby restaurant the following Saturday. The week before lunch, I questioned if she was ready to confront the problematic habits or just trying to smooth things up without meaningful change. I went to the restaurant first on Saturday and secured a peaceful table in the rear. My mother entered nervously and smiled tentatively as she sat down. We ordered dinner and awkwardly discussed work and weather till it arrived. After setting down her fork, my mother glanced at me with an unusual expression. She said she'd always seen Samantha as more delicate and in need of protection due to her modeling profession and beauty obsession. She realized she'd ignored my wants and feelings throughout the years after seeing me stand up to the whole family. She constantly expected me to be reasonable and satisfy Samantha's needs. As she admitted to making me feel less important than my sister, her voice shook. Her prior apologies seemed more about resolving dispute than understanding. As she talked, my wrath toward her softened. My mother inquired how to fix our relationship. I liked that she asked instead of expecting everything would return to normal. I told her honestly that she shouldn't expect me to sacrifice for Samantha in the future. I requested that she prioritize both girls' needs rather than Samantha to repair our friendship. I demanded that she obey my boundaries, even if it upset Samantha or complicated family matters. My mother cried and squeezed my hand across the table. She agreed and claimed she wanted to do better, that she hadn't understood how much partiality had hurt until the situation forced her to see it. I was cautiously optimistic for the first time in months that our relationship may mend with true effort from both of us. James sent me Ella's progress images 3 weeks after the procedures. The first batch depicted her happy visage with a protective eye covering and joyful notes about her improved vision. He reported her visual progress every several days. Ella's doctor said her graft was mending well and she could see better than before her illness. Ella sent a snapshot of her elaborate drawings of flowers and butterflies, which she couldn't see previously. James's text claimed she was happy to see her mother's face again and was pointing out features she'd missed. I was thrilled for my niece when I saw their drawings. Ella's excitement and satisfaction that the medical procedure was favorable made all my conflicted feelings regarding Samantha and my family worthwhile. Samantha didn't contact me for a month following surgery. In his Ella updates, James periodically noted that Samantha had healed physically from the treatment but was struggling with her emotions. He stated she was irritated that the procedure was tougher and more painful than predicted. He said Samantha was upset I never thanked her for giving to Ella. I let James know that Samantha doing what moms do for their kids wasn't a sacrifice I needed to appreciate. She'd spent months lying about job implications and encouraging Ella to guilt-trip me into surgery. Going through with what she should have agreed to instantly didn't impress me. After that, James said nothing but acknowledged that he understood my position. My father contacted 6 weeks after both surgery with his usual direct family conflict style. He claimed enough time had gone and the family needed to move on from turmoil. He wanted to have a party to put this behind us and resume family life. I told him I was willing to attend family occasions, but that normal needed to mean something different from it did before. I stated that going ahead required healthy boundaries and mutual respect rather than just pretending the preceding months hadn't happened. My father seemed upset and suggested I was making things more complex than they needed to be. He stated everyone had apologized and Samantha had done the right thing in the end, so we should all just get past it. I pointed out that apologies without altered conduct didn't mean much, and that I wasn't going to return to a dynamic where my needs were immediately neglected. He complained about my being stubborn, but ultimately agreed that he'd host a family cookout and I could come if I wanted to. 2 months after surgery, I headed to my parents' place for my father's cookout. Coming into their driveway and seeing Samantha's vehicle parked made me apprehensive. After entering the garden, I noted the uneasy atmosphere of everyone being extremely nice and careful with their words. Samantha was talking to James near the grill when I arrived and hardly looked at me. Mama hugged me and whispered she was delighted I arrived. Ella called my name and ran across the yard toward me. Ella slammed into me with an embrace and showed me her improved vision. She correctly read yard signs and detailed microscopic details on flowers and foliage she couldn't see before the transplant. Her joy and excitement were contagious. Watching her point out everything she could now see made the difficult family dynamics worth it. Later that afternoon, Samantha and I were alone on my parents' back porch. When I stepped outside to get away from the crowd, she followed. We were uneasy for a minute before she said quietly. Her modeling agency included her gift in a promotion promoting loving moms. Several clients had praised her, and the tale had garnered exposure for her in the agency. She softly acknowledged that I was right about the career implications being overblown. She was afraid about the procedure, not the career repercussions. She lowered her voice as she said that she'd never had surgery and that the thought of having her eye operated on had caused weeks of panic episodes. It was her closest to taking responsibility for her actions. She wasn't apologetic, but she said her anxieties were about the procedure, not her career. While I didn't declare I'd forgiven her, I nodded to acknowledge her. We waited there for another time before returning inside to the family. I told Samantha I understood being terrified of medical issues, but she shouldn't rush me into surgery or guilt trip me. Moving her weight, she peered down at the porch planks. She regretted her actions, especially including Ella in adult issues. I nodded to acknowledge her but didn't forgive her. We returned inside where everyone was eating and feigning calm. I avoided Samantha for a few months and spent more time with my mother and Ella. Dad stopped calling my looks or career worthless. He nevertheless reacted defensively to pressure campaign mentions. James texted me sometimes to check in and apologize for his role in things, which I liked since he appeared to understand why they did wrong. I started visiting Miriam every other week to maintain healthy family boundaries and stay in touch with loved ones. She showed me I could love my family without being hurt. I practiced identifying manipulation so I could stop it before it got out of hand, as with the cornea scenario. James reported that Samantha signed multiple modeling contracts 4 months after the procedures, including one that portrayed her as a dedicated mother who gave to her kid. She had battled so hard against contributing, so it was ludicrous. But now she was earning money by being unselfish. James claimed Samantha seldom mentioned the operation and didn't realize how close she came to refusing to help Ella. In one therapy session, I told Miriam I was frustrated that Samantha would never comprehend her injury. Miriam asked me what I could manage. I couldn't make Samantha learn from what occurred, only how I treated her. I choose to focus on Ella rather than Samantha and keep things distant but courteous with my sister. At Ella's 6-month visit, the doctor remarked her recovery was fantastic, better than expected. Now that she could see the school board, she took art courses and sketched these intricate images. Watching her point out minor things in her paintings she never seen before made me thrilled the medical portion went well. Despite the familial chaos, my mother hosted Thanksgiving dinner and I didn't feel apprehensive traveling there like I used to. I stated my disapproval of some issues and practices. My mother respected such limits. My mother interrupted my father's joking about me being the troublesome daughter and stated I was right to defend myself. Her defense of me nearly knocked my fork over. Samantha and I became cordial at family gatherings but didn't hang together or communicate on the phone. She never thanked me for being a backup donor or acknowledged her unreasonable expectations. I understood that this was probably our best relationship and was okay with it. Olivia and I had coffee one day and she stated I seemed more confident than previously. I reconsidered and agreed with her. Standing up to my family when they pressured me and preserving my limits when things became heated made me trust myself more. It was inspiring to understand I could withstand family disapproval and come out all right. One evening 6 months after the operations, I sat at my desk thinking about how the event affected my concept of family and body autonomy. I was delighted Ella got medical treatment and Samantha did what a mother should. Teaching my family that my limits mattered was worth the brief friction and unpleasantness, so I was pleased I didn't let them manipulate me into contributing. Mom started contacting me every Sunday afternoon to ask about my week and listen to my work assignment. She asked me about the coding and the difficulties I was solving instead of waiting to chat about Samantha's recent picture session. She told me she'd been researching computer languages online to better understand my profession one Sunday. I almost dropped my phone hearing that. She stopped making remarks about my attire or inquiring when I was meeting someone, making family calls much less unpleasant. James emailed me photographs of Ella reading chapter books and drawing intricately, demonstrating her eyesight recovery. He wrote letters moaning about Samantha taking 2 hours to get dressed for grocery store visits or sweating out about a mirror wrinkle. I generally complimented Ella's growth or said something neutral about Samantha's conduct in my quick comments. I suggested he should see a therapist for his marriage issues when he asked for advice on Samantha's vanity. We both liked it more when he stopped and only sent Ella updates. Students covered every wall and table in the primary school cafeteria art display. Ella grabbed my hand when I entered and hurried me to her part, excitedly pointing off her drawings. She had this amazing butterfly sketch with tiny wing patterns that she couldn't create before the surgery because she couldn't see them. Samantha was always shooting photographs and videos and sharing them on social media with remarks praising her amazing kid. I disliked the paperwork since Samantha made everything about her internet image. At least she showed there and looked interested in Ella's work. Dad phoned to offer lunch 8 months after Samantha wanted my cornea. He spent the first 10 minutes in this cafe near my place awkwardly talking about weather and traffic. He then laid down his menu and stated he owed me a serious apology for his behavior during the transplant. He said he was incorrect to think my profession and appearance were less significant than Samantha's because I worked from home. He reflected on how he always anticipated me to be the easy kid who didn't need attention while Samantha was treated better since she was more frail. He said he was proud of how I stood up for myself despite family opposition. That required courage he didn't realize. I could tell he meant it because his voice broke. Since I accepted his apologies, I wanted to improve our relationship. Samantha had numerous more modeling jobs in the following months, and her agent promoted her contribution story. She told parenting publications that giving her cornea was the most important thing she'd ever done and about mom's sacrifices. Given her initial opposition to contributing, the web stories seemed ludicrous. The great exposure made her kinder during family gatherings. Because she was high on attention and praise, she smiled more and made less harsh remarks about others. I never mentioned how phony the loving mother image was compared to her actions during those months of pressure and manipulation. While sitting at my computer one evening, I noticed I didn't feel that searing fury anymore when I thought about February and March. The experience and family conduct were awful. But I learned vital lessons about setting boundaries and trusting my own judgment when others disagreed. With more confidence in my choices, I was less inclined to second-guess myself when someone pressured me into something I didn't want to do. Miriam's treatment helped me see manipulative methods and stop them before they got out of hand. I could be appreciative for what I learned without pretending the incident was acceptable or my family handled it nicely. A few weeks later, Samantha, James, and Ella joined us for supper at Mom's. Ella questioned me across the table why I didn't give her my eye like Mommy did halfway through the dinner. Everyone stopped eating to hear my response. I emphasized that mommies and daddies care for their kids differently than aunts and uncles. Some family members don't have the same responsibility to support their children as parents. Ella hesitated, then nodded and said she was grateful Mommy was bold enough to let her see again. Her mother did the right thing, I agreed. Samantha stared at her dish silently. At Olivia's apartment on New Year's Eve, I reflected on how much had changed since February. With meaningful interactions and mutual respect, my connection with Mom was improving instead of being rejected. Dad apologized and appeared to grasp his mistake. Ella and I had a good connection, so I could be in her life without pressure or manipulation. Samantha and I would certainly never be close sisters who phoned each other for advice or hung out. But we could be together without friction, which was plenty. I defended my right to make bodily decisions, made sure Ella had the best medical care, and educated my family to accept my limitations. Despite my fear, standing up for myself while everyone was against me was one of the finest things I ever did. My parents canceled my 18th birthday because my sister was too upset. That night, my grandpa cut them off and took me away. So, I just turned 18 a couple of days ago, but unfortunately my parents canceled my party at the very last minute because my bratty older sister demanded it. To be honest, she wasn't even supposed to be here for the party, and I was really happy about it. But it's just my luck that, the day she was supposed to leave, all the flights got canceled because of severe storms in the Midwest. She was supposed to leave for New York City 3 days before my birthday with a bunch of her friends. But, for now, they have had to postpone the trip, and she has been extremely upset about it, which means that my parents have been walking on eggshells around her because they really don't want to piss her off. I mean, they wouldn't dare. She's the golden child of our family after all. So much so that, on the morning of my birthday, she demanded that my birthday be cancelled because if she doesn't get to have fun, neither will I. And of course my parents didn't even think twice before sending out the message to every single person who had been invited. And I found out about it much later, around the evening, when I was patiently waiting for all the guests to arrive. But nobody was coming by. When I finally asked my parents why nobody had arrived, even by 7 o'clock in the evening, they finally told me that they had canceled the party without even asking me because my sister was very upset, and they didn't think that it would be right to have a party when she was in such a state. It was then that I completely lost my temper and started screaming at my parents because it was just so unfair. My parents had always acted very differently with my sister, catering to her every need more than mine, and expecting me to compromise and adjust throughout my life. I had always done that, but this was just taking things way too far. It was my parents who had offered to organize my 18th birthday party for me, and had invited all my friends and relatives so we could have a big birthday bash. And now, they had canceled all of it without even telling me, just because my sister was whining about some trip that got cancelled for very valid reasons, and it wasn't even in anybody's control. My parents had also been sly enough to tell all the guests that the reason they were canceling the party was because I had fallen sick all of a sudden, and they had requested everyone specifically not to text me about it until the next day, because then I would end up being on my phone, and that was the last thing that I needed with my migraine. So nobody had even texted me, and I wasn't able to figure out what was going on until the last minute. As soon as my parents told me what was happening, I started fighting with them and screaming at them. I was extremely upset because who wouldn't be in my place? Even then, the only thing they were concerned about was me being too loud because they were worried that my sister would wake up from her nap. I couldn't care less about that, and I just went on screaming until my sister came downstairs and started defending our parents, saying that they had done nothing wrong. She claimed that she was the one who had said that she didn't want anybody partying or having any sort of celebration at a time when she was so upset because it would just be heartless. And if I couldn't see that, then I was really the most spoiled and entitled person. The sheer audacity to even say that to me, after what she had done, pissed me off to such a level that I just started blindly cursing at her. And I grabbed her hair and tried to shake her. So things ended up getting physical. Our parents had to break us apart, and I guess we didn't hear the doorbell ringing until we finally stopped fighting. My parents were very sure that they had uninvited everyone. But, when they opened the door, my grandpa was standing outside. My paternal grandfather is really a force to be reckoned with, and everyone in the family fears and respects him a lot, including my parents. So having him at the door was not good news for them. As soon as the door was opened, he stepped inside and started inquiring about why there was so much yelling and cursing. And he looked at me for answers because, well, I was the one who was cursing the most. Usually I wouldn't tell anyone about the kind of treatment that I received from my parents because it was very petty. But this time, I hid absolutely nothing and told my grandpa everything. I was very upset with my parents and my sister, and I didn't think there was any point in trying to hide the truth anymore, because that would just encourage them to treat me even worse. It was time to speak up, and so I did. I also told him that my sister being treated like the favorite was not even just a one-off incident. It was something that I've had to put up with every single day for the past 18 years of my life. But this incident was the limit, and I couldn't put up with this anymore. As soon as I was done talking about it, I could see that my grandpa was absolutely appalled. The shock was visible on his face, and within a few seconds, he snapped at my father and started scolding him. I got to find out a lot of things that, so far, I had no idea about. My grandpa started scolding my father because, apparently, he had been sending money to my parents every month for the past couple of years because my parents had been struggling to keep their business going and also support our family. So, it was really my grandfather who had been supporting us all along. And even this party that my parents were about to take credit for, it had all been paid for by my grandfather. My grandpa told my parents that they had really let him down by treating me this way because, from the way I was acting, it was very obvious that I had been traumatized because of their favoritism towards my sister. My parents quietly let him talk. But my sister, being the absolute fool that she is, tried to argue with him and told him that the only reason she had asked for this to be cancelled was because she was absolutely shattered that her trip to New York, that she had been looking forward to for the past couple of months, had been cancelled for the foreseeable future, and it was really heartless to have a party when she was suffering. But my grandpa had no time for her, and the BS she was spewing, and told her to her face that she was the epitome of entitlement to even demand that I cancel my 18th birthday party just to accommodate her feelings about a trip that she could take later. He told her that the world didn't revolve around her. And I think that must have actually been news to her. Anyway, my sister arguing with my grandpa pissed him off even more. And eventually, he just told my parents that he would no longer be supporting them, and that they were on their own now. Then, he told me to pack my bags and come along with him if I wanted to move out, because clearly, my parents were up to no good, and they only cared about my sister. Even when my grandpa said that, the only thing my parents seemed to be outraged about was the fact that my grandpa had said they would not receive any financial support from him anymore. They didn't even seem to care about the fact that he had offered to let me move in with him, and I was about to take him up on that offer, which just goes to show that my grandpa was completely right about them not giving a crap about me. So, I wasted no time. I went upstairs while my parents tried to bargain and argue with my grandpa so he would not withdraw his support, and I quickly packed my things. Then, I went downstairs and left with my grandpa, who didn't even look back at his son one last time. While we were driving to his place, he even apologized to me for everything that I had gone through, and said that he should have taken this step a really long time ago. I don't know what that means, but I'm just really glad that I'm staying with him right now. The only people who are unhappy about this arrangement are obviously my parents, and they have been relentlessly trying to get through to me. I haven't blocked them yet, but I haven't been responding to them either. I haven't picked up any of their calls, and neither have I answered any of their messages. But I have been reading all of them. My mom and dad kept texting me to apologize to me, and kept saying that they really didn't think things through, that they always put my sister first, because she was more delicate, and her feelings were more fragile, and in doing so, they didn't even realize that they were neglecting me. They were really sorry about it. They really tried very hard to make it seem like they were only neglecting me because they thought I was tough and strong enough to deal with it. But let's be real, my sister is almost 5 years older than me. And if anything, she should have been the one who was strong enough to deal with the fact that she had to share her parents with me. So, I didn't buy a single word of what my parents were trying to tell me. And I knew that they were only acting this way because they wanted me to come back, so my grandpa would continue to support them. All I wanted from them was just one genuine apology, but that never came. And it started really pissing me off. So this morning I told my father to stop texting me, and said that I knew they were only doing this because they wanted my grandpa to continue supporting them, and I did not need their fake apologies. I was done with them, and they had shown me exactly where their priorities were by canceling my birthday party, without even asking me. That really was the straw that broke the camel's back, and now I was never coming back to them. Instead of apologizing, my dad then wrote back to me and said that he knew he had treated me unfairly, and so had my mother. But they were willing to apologize for it and ready to do anything to make it up to me. They made a mistake by saying that they were ready to do anything, because I took that opportunity to tell them that I would only agree to come back to them, and talk to my grandpa about supporting them, if, and only if they could promise me that when I came back, my sister would no longer be living with us. After all, she was 23 and had been working for the past 2 years. She should have saved up enough money to have been able to move out by now. So, I don't even think I was being that unfair. But my parents think that I'm being ridiculous and heartless. So now, AITA for telling my parents that I will only move back in with them if my sister moves out. For starters, I think I had mentioned in my original post earlier, it had all just been very petty little incidents. I remember always being told that I had to leave the last slice of pizza, or the last of any food that was ordered, for my sister if she happened to like it. And if she didn't, only then was I allowed to finish it at all. Similarly, I was not allowed to buy or wear the kind of clothes that she liked. My parents told me that she had her personal style, and I should never try to copy it, and that meant I couldn't wear anything that was trendy. I was mostly forced to wear her hand-me-downs since we were almost the same size. I rarely ever got to buy anything new, because my parents thought it was pointless, so, that kind of stuff. She had always just been a huge priority for my parents, and even though these things are petty, they still add up. Unfortunately, I never thought that this was important enough to mention to my relatives. And, even if I had done that, I hardly think these were grounds for anyone to want to take me away, or offer to let me move out of my house. Which is why I just kept quiet about it, because otherwise it would just piss my parents off even more. And coming to my grandfather, I said that he's a force to be reckoned with because literally everybody in the family admires and respects him. Back in his day, he was one of the best lawyers and had won many difficult cases. He is extremely morally upright, leads a very disciplined lifestyle, and, not to mention, he's extremely wealthy as well. So, obviously it goes without saying that everybody in the family looks up to him. If I wanted to, I could have spoken to him about how my parents were treating me, but up until last year, my grandpa was really busy taking care of my grandmother, who was in her final stages of life. He was a bit too preoccupied by that, and I didn't want to bother him with my petty complaints against my parents when he was already dealing with so much. And after my grandma passed away, he was grieving. So, I didn't think that it was worth it to bring it up anyway. Now that he has offered to help me out, I'm really grateful for it. We have always had a good relationship, and so it's not surprising that he has offered to let me move in with him until it's time for me to go away for college. He even told me that he's going to bear all the expenses of that until I am working. I'm going to stick to the condition that I put forward to my parents. Obviously, I have no intention of going back to living with my parents, even if they kick my sister out. I just want to see if they actually do it. That's all. That will let me know if they are serious about wanting me back, and if they think my sister is more important than my grandfather's financial support. I haven't told him anything about this, but, to be fair, there were also a lot of things that had been kept from me and that I didn't find out about until recently. So, I think it's fair enough. I'm referring to the fact that all along, my grandpa had known that my parents didn't really want me. And yet, he had never done anything about it. In fact, I had never even known why exactly my parents preferred my sister, even though she did not have any qualities that would explain their partial behavior. It was my grandpa who explained to me recently that my parents initially only planned on having one child. But then, 5 years after my sister was born, my mother got pregnant with me. They planned on terminating the pregnancy, but my dad made the mistake of telling my mother's parents about it. And they were quite insistent on the fact that, if my parents had been blessed with another child, it would be wrong to reject that blessing. So, my maternal grandparents talked my parents into having me. But unfortunately, they got into a really terrible car accident when my mother was in her 8th month. And after fighting for their lives for a couple of weeks, both of them succumbed to their injuries. Obviously my mom was devastated, and she had a bit of a psychotic break while she was pregnant, where she started accusing me of bringing bad luck to her life. She had to be institutionalized for a couple of weeks, and when she came back, she was relatively better. But my parents subconsciously started regretting the fact that they had ever allowed the pregnancy to come this far. They had every intention of putting me up for adoption after I was born. But this time, my paternal grandparents put their foot down and said that they were just being ridiculous and did not allow my parents to put me up for adoption. They were unwilling parents, but nevertheless, they still raised me. My grandpa told me about all of this when I confronted him about the remark that he had made when he was bringing me back home, about how he should have known better and taken this step a long time ago. So this is what he really meant by that. And I agree, he definitely should have. Anyway, now that I know the truth about why exactly my parents have treated me differently, I know that I will never go back to them, and the way that I'm treating them right now is completely justified. They punished me for years for something that was not even my fault. At least I'm better than that, and punishing them for things that are actually their fault. I'm still a little annoyed with my grandpa for not telling me the truth earlier, but I kind of understand that these things are hard to talk about, especially to someone who's still a kid. But he's the only person I can rely on right now, so I'm trying not to be so mad at him. So it's been a week and 4 days since I moved out of my house, and my parents have been texting me, trying to get me to change my mind about the condition that I had proposed, but I did not respond to them. I did not think it was necessary to speak to them until they had come to a decision. They hadn't tried to call me or text me for the past 3 days, and I thought that they had finally given up. But today, while I was leaving after school, I saw that my sister was standing outside, and I didn't get a good feeling about it. So, I asked one of my male friends to walk me home. He's a football player, so he's kind of on the bigger side, and I knew if my sister tried to do anything funny, he would be there to come to my rescue. Him and I have been friends for a really long time, so I trust him implicitly, and he knows literally everything, including whatever I have mentioned about my family. So he agreed to walk me back home, and my sister kept following us silently, and it was really creeping me out. Halfway back home I decided to turn around and confront her about what exactly she was trying to do. She told me that she was not willing to talk to me about these things in front of a stranger, but I told her that I was not even willing to speak to her at all. She then started telling me that our parents have been really stressed out and upset, and it's all because of me, and how I've been behaving. Then, she mentioned that yesterday our parents had finally told her that I would not come back home or even speak to my grandpa about supporting them again until they were back on their feet, unless she was kicked out of the house. She was here to confront me about it because she thought that I was being extremely unfair. I thought it was ridiculous of her to think that I would dignify this with a discussion, so I just told her that if I can't be happy, then neither can she. That's exactly the logic that she had used to get my party cancelled, and I think it should apply to her as well. Then, I turned around to walk back home, but she started screaming at me and said that I was a horrible human being. I didn't even bother to respond or even turn around. I just kept walking with my friend and flipped her off. I guess the fact that I flipped her off was what pissed her off, because the next thing I knew she had attacked me, and I was on the ground. I was wearing a backpack so I could feel the weight of that as well as her on my back. Thankfully though, my friend had my back, literally, because within seconds, I felt my sister being lifted off. And when I finally managed to get back on my feet and dust myself off, I saw that my friend was literally holding her one arm away, and he had barely even broken a sweat. So I guess I was right to have him walk me back home, since my sister always had a violent streak, and I knew about it. I was extremely annoyed that she had even thought that she could attack me and get away with it. So I walked up to her, slapped her really hard, and told her that if she tried to do anything funny again, I would report her to the cops, and with all the trouble that she had already caused for her dear parents, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't appreciate it more. She still had the audacity to try and continue arguing with me, but after that, my friend and I continued to walk away, and after that slap, she did not pursue me further. When I got back home I told my grandpa all about it, and he was about to call the cops, but I told him that it was not even worth it. She was just a loser. And I'm pretty sure that she had learned her lesson. Besides, I'm sure that she was already in a risky position with regards to our parents. I finally told my grandpa about what I had said to my parents, the condition that I had set for them. I thought my grandpa would be upset, but he literally laughed along with me because he thought it was really clever, and he agreed that my parents definitely deserved to get messed around with. So, that was that. And even though I'm feeling a bit sore from being pushed to the ground, I felt good that I could finally slap the daylights out of my sister because she totally deserved that, and it had been a long time coming. Now, I'm just hoping that my parents and my sister take this as a lesson and leave me alone. In September I'm supposed to start college, so I'm only going to be living with my grandpa for the next couple of months, since school is officially over now. I had my high school graduation a couple of days ago, and my date to the prom was my boyfriend, the football player friend that I've been talking about in my last update. Yep, some of you guys called it. And I just wanted to get this happy little tidbit out of the way before I get into what happened with my parents and my sister. So, after my altercation with my sister, I received a message from my parents 2 days later saying that they had come to a conclusion about what they wanted to do, and they were going to let my sister continue living with them because I was clearly not the kind of person they wanted around her, since I had always been jealous and petty. They told me that the only reason they had wanted me to come back was because they needed the financial support from my grandpa. But my mother's older brother had decided to step in as a partner and an investor in the business, so they did not require that any longer, and neither did they want me around anymore. I'm pretty sure that they thought this was going to hurt my feelings, but I had already known about their true intentions from the beginning. So, this revelation made absolutely no difference to me, and I didn't even reply to that message. I guess the fact that I did not reply got under their skin, because they sent me another message a couple of hours later, saying that they were going to block me now because I was a horrible human being, just like my sister had said. Not only was I horrible and heartless, but I was also violent and ungrateful. Violent because obviously, I had slapped my sister the other day, and it was no big surprise that they had chosen to ignore the fact that my sister was the one who had provoked me and attacked me by pushing me to the ground. Or better yet, I don't even think they knew about it, because my sister must have not told them. And ungrateful because, after everything that my parents had done for me, I still had the audacity to act like they were bad parents. They brought up how they had raised me and spent so much money on feeding me, sending me to school, and clothing me. I really don't understand why parents bring up stuff like that when they are in a tough spot, because I think it's pretty much the bare minimum that they can do for their kids. It doesn't make them special, but I guess, in my parents' opinions, they think that the bare minimum is more than enough, and I should treat them like my saviors for all of that. Anyway, I really wanted to respond to that, but I decided against it because it would just be a waste of my time. So, before they could block me, I blocked them first, and now I'm done. My grandpa and I are living quite happily, and so far, I have been accepted into a lot of colleges of my choice. I'm still waiting to hear back from some of the better ones though, and then my grandpa will cover all the expenses like he had promised me earlier. We are still trying to get into the groove of living together because I still do find myself getting mad at him occasionally for not taking me away from my parents earlier. But, at least he's trying to fix that later on in life. He must have had his constraints as well, and I know that he really regrets not being able to help me out when I really needed it. But now, we are working on it together, so I don't ever have to deal with my parents on my own again. Hopefully, they won't reach out to me ever again either. I'm doing great right now, and from what I know, my entire family has cut off my parents and my sister. My mom's side of the family is still in touch with them. But, thanks to my grandpa, nobody from my dad's side speaks to them anymore. Most people were not aware of the way I was being treated because, well, I never spoke about it. But after my grandpa started telling people that he was not in touch with my parents anymore, they started finding out exactly why we had that fallout. And my parents ended up getting ostracized. I don't think they have anybody to blame for this situation apart from themselves. So, it's karma, I guess. I have absolutely no idea what my sister has been up to, but I heard from a couple of people that she finally moved out and is living independently as of last week. To be honest, that's the news that reminded me to update you guys here. My boyfriend and I are still going strong, and we meet each other on the weekend since I go back home every weekend, because my college is pretty close. I've made a lot of friends here, and I really feel like a brand new person, to be honest. My grandpa and I have also been able to work on our relationship, and are as close as ever now. He's my favorite person in the whole world, and I don't think anything can ever change that. He has made his mistakes in the past, but well, who hasn't? I have forgiven him, and we have moved on from everything. So yeah, I'm really happy now. My sister mocked my home on Thanksgiving. I told her to leave, and we haven't spoken in 5 years. Now she wants my help for her wedding. My name's Daniel. I'm 32, and I work as a mechanic. It's not a fancy job, but it pays the bills, and I actually enjoy it. You get to see stuff getting fixed, and I like the feeling of solving a problem. Plus, owning my own little garage now means I don't have to answer to some clueless manager. Anyway, that's not the point here. The point is, my family is kind of a mess, and my sister Sophie is a huge part of that. Let me give you a bit of background. Growing up, my family wasn't poor, but we weren't well off either. My mom, Linda, worked at a local diner, and my dad, Harold, is a truck driver. Nothing glamorous. They worked hard, but there was never a ton of extra cash lying around. My parents were practical, which is why what happened with Sophie still blows my mind. So Sophie is my younger sister by about 3 years. She's always been the golden child. You know, the type who got everything handed to her on a silver platter, while I was expected to figure things out on my own. And she never worked for anything in her life. Growing up, it was like she could do no wrong. If she wanted something, my parents would bend over backward to make it happen. But if I wanted anything, I had to work for it, or forget about it. I'm not going to lie. I've always been a bit resentful about that. I mean, how could I not be? There I was, busting my ass, mowing lawns, working odd jobs, and doing whatever I could to save up for things, while Sophie was getting handed money to go shopping with her friends or whatever. My parents acted like it was no big deal, but trust me, it got under my skin. Anyway, fast forward a bit to when I was about 27. I'd finally saved up enough to buy my first house. Nothing fancy, just a little 2-bedroom fixer-upper on the edge of town. It wasn't in the best neighborhood, but it was mine, you know. I spent months fixing it up, paint, new floors, redoing the kitchen, the whole thing. I was proud of it. I mean, it was the first time in my life I really felt like I'd accomplished something big on my own, so, naturally, I decided to host Thanksgiving that year. I figured it would be a good way to show off my hard work to my family, so I invited my parents, and even though I knew it'd be a pain, I invited Sophie too. She'd been dating this real estate guy, Nathan, for about a year at that point. This guy was loaded. Or, at least, that's what Sophie kept bragging about. Fancy car, nice clothes, living in some luxury condo downtown. Whatever. I didn't care about his money. Good for him, I guess. But what I didn't expect was how Sophie and Nathan were going to act at Thanksgiving. The day comes, and I've been cooking all day, cleaning the house, making sure everything's perfect. My parents show up, and everything's going smoothly. We're talking, catching up, eating appetizers, you know, normal stuff. Then, Sophie and Nathan roll up. Now, right off the bat, Sophie comes in with this attitude like she's better than everyone else. She walks around the house, looking at everything like she's inspecting it. I tried to let it go, but I could feel my blood starting to boil. She starts making these little comments about how small the house is, how old-fashioned the decor looks, and how the neighborhood isn't exactly safe. She doesn't stop there though. She goes on and on about how Nathan's condo is huge, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city, and some fancy security system. I kept my mouth shut, but I was seething inside. Like, seriously, who comes to someone's house for Thanksgiving and spends the whole time criticizing it? My parents didn't say anything, of course. They just sat there, probably thinking, oh, that's just Sophie. I could feel my patience slipping away, but I was trying to be the bigger person, you know. I didn't want to cause a scene. But then, she crossed the line. She starts talking about how Nathan pays for everything, how lucky she is to be with him, and how she'd never have to live in a place like mine. Like, really rubbing it in my face. That's when I lost it. I looked at her and said, at least I bought this house with my own money. I worked for it. I didn't need our parents to pay for anything, and I definitely didn't need to rely on someone else's paycheck to get it. Can you say the same? Sophie's face went red, and I could tell I'd hit a nerve. Nathan, who had been pretty quiet up until that point, gave me this annoyed look, but he didn't say anything. My parents just sat there, awkward as hell, like they had no idea what to do. I didn't care anymore. I was pissed. Then, I told her, if you think you're too good for my place, you can show yourself the door. No one's keeping you here. And that was it. She and Nathan stormed out without saying another word. My parents tried to calm me down afterward, saying things like she didn't mean it, and you know how she is, but I wasn't having it. I'd had enough. I told them I wasn't going to keep putting up with her crap just because she's family. From that moment on, Sophie and I stopped talking. I haven't seen her since that day, and honestly, I'm fine with it. My life's been a lot less stressful without her in it. My parents, though, they've never stopped trying to get us to make up. Every once in a while, they'll bring her up, saying stuff like, family's family, or, you two should let bygones be bygones. But I'm not interested. Sophie's always been a spoiled, entitled brat, and nothing's changed. So, yeah, that's how it all went down. My sister hasn't spoken to me in 5 years because I finally stood up to her. And honestly, I don't miss her. She was always a source of stress, and my life's better without her drama. Alright, so here we are. 5 years after that whole Thanksgiving disaster. Things have been pretty quiet between Sophie and me. Honestly, I thought it would just stay that way, and I was totally fine with it. No drama, no stress. But of course, nothing ever stays simple for long when family's involved. A couple of weeks ago, my mom calls me up out of the blue. I hadn't heard from her in a little while, which wasn't unusual. We'd been on decent terms since the whole Sophie thing went down, but we didn't talk every day or anything. Anyway, she calls, and the first thing she says is, "Daniel, we need to talk." Now, when someone says that, it's never good, right? My mind starts racing, thinking maybe something bad happened with Dad's health or something. But nope, it's not that. Instead, she drops this bombshell on me. Sophie's getting married to that same guy, Nathan, from 5 years ago, the guy who was with her during the Thanksgiving nightmare. I'll be honest, my first reaction wasn't great. I just kind of sighed and said, "Oh, okay." Because, well, what else was I supposed to say? It's not like I care about Sophie's relationship status anymore, but I figured that's where the conversation would end. Nope. Mom starts going on about how Sophie's wedding is this huge deal, and how it's going to be really fancy. She's talking about venues, flowers, the whole 9 yards. And of course she's excited. My parents have always been way more invested in Sophie's life than mine. It's just the way things have always been. But then, she says something that makes me pause. "We've promised Sophie that we'll cover the cost of the venue and decorations." Mom says, "But Daniel, we're going to need a little help." I had to do a double take at that. "Wait, what? You need help with what?" I asked, feeling a little confused. "We need you to help us cover the costs," she says, as if this is just a normal thing to ask. I'm not going to lie, I was floored. I didn't even know what to say at first. My parents wanted me to give them money for Sophie's wedding. The same Sophie I haven't spoken to in 5 years. The same Sophie who made my life miserable for most of our childhood. The same Sophie who walked out of my house without so much as an apology that Thanksgiving. It felt like I was living in some alternate reality where none of that mattered. I mean, come on. They seriously expected me to help pay for her wedding. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Mom, why would you even think I'd want to do that?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, even though I was already starting to get worked up. Mom seemed genuinely surprised. "Daniel, it's your sister. Family helps family." That's when I snapped. I told her exactly what I thought. Family helps family. Really? Where was that energy when I needed help paying for trade school? You guys didn't lift a finger back then, but now you want me to hand over money for Sophie's wedding? The same Sophie I don't even speak to. Mom got real quiet after that, probably because she didn't have a good answer. I didn't stop there though. I reminded her about all the times Sophie got whatever she wanted while I had to fend for myself. How they let her walk all over me for years, and now they're asking me for money like none of that ever happened. After a minute, Mom finally said, "It's different, Daniel." I just laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how ridiculous it sounded. "And you think I have money to just throw at Sophie's wedding now? Do you even hear yourself? I'm not giving you a single dime for this. If you can't afford it, you shouldn't have promised it." Mom got defensive after that, saying they didn't want Sophie to feel like they couldn't support her, especially in front of Nathan's wealthy family. Apparently they've been trying to keep up with his parents, who are loaded and throwing money at the wedding left and right. My parents wanted to contribute so they didn't look like they were falling behind. It was all just so shallow. I mean, who cares if Nathan's family has more money? It doesn't change the fact that Sophie's spoiled and entitled, but my parents were so wrapped up in this image they wanted to present, that they were willing to beg me for money just to keep up appearances. I told Mom I wasn't going to help, that it wasn't my responsibility, and I didn't even care about the wedding. She tried to guilt trip me, saying how this was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and how it would mean a lot to the family if I pitched in, but I wasn't budging. I told her straight up that she needed to figure this out without me. She sounded disappointed, but I wasn't backing down. We ended the call on a pretty awkward note, with her telling me she'd talk to Dad and figure out another way. The whole thing just left me feeling drained. I couldn't believe the nerve they had to even ask me for money after all these years, especially for Sophie of all people. It just brought back all the resentment I thought I'd buried after the Thanksgiving fight. The way my parents have always bent over backward for Sophie while I've had to figure everything out on my own. It's like nothing's changed. Over the next few days, I tried to forget about it, but it kept eating at me. Part of me wondered if I'd overreacted. I mean, it was my parents asking for help, and I've always been the kind of person who tries to do right by them, even when they frustrate me. But this felt different. It felt like they were crossing a line. I was still stewing over the whole thing when my dad called me a week later. Now my dad doesn't usually call unless it's something important, so I picked up right away. He cut straight to the point. "Your mom told me you won't help with Sophie's wedding," he said. No hello, no small talk, just straight into it. "Yeah, that's right," I said, feeling my stomach tighten. I could already tell this conversation wasn't going to go well. Dad let out a long sigh. "Daniel, we really need you to help us out here. We've already committed to paying for part of it, and now we're stuck. If we don't come through, it's going to look bad." There it was again. This obsession with how things looked. It wasn't even about Sophie anymore. It was about saving face in front of Nathan's family. I could feel the anger bubbling up again. "Look, Dad," I said, trying to stay calm. "I'm not responsible for the promises you made. If you can't afford it, then you shouldn't have offered to pay. I'm not going to bail you out." Dad didn't like that. He started going on about how family should stick together and how they've always done their best for us. But the more he talked, the more I realized something. They weren't asking for my help because they needed it. They were asking because they expected it, like it was my duty to clean up their mess. So, I cut him off. "I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm not doing it. You'll have to figure something else out." And that was it. The conversation ended on a sour note, just like the one with my mom. They weren't happy with me, but for once, I didn't feel guilty. I'd spent my whole life trying to keep the peace, but this time, I wasn't going to let them push me around. Alright, so after that conversation with my dad, I thought things would settle down. I'd made my stance pretty clear, and I figured they'd just leave it alone. I mean, what else could they do, right? But of course, that's not how my family works. It never is. A few days later, I get this message from my cousin Lucas. Now Lucas is one of the few relatives I actually get along with. He's not into the whole drama thing, and we've always been on good terms. So when he texts me saying, "Hey, can we talk?" I figured it was something casual, maybe just catching up or whatever. But when we got on the phone, it was pretty clear that wasn't the case. "Kev, man, what's going on with your folks?" he asked, not even bothering with the usual small talk. "What do you mean?" I replied, already feeling a knot form in my stomach. I had a feeling I knew where this was headed, but I wasn't about to jump to conclusions. Lucas sighed. "I just talked to your mom, and she was like, really upset. She said something about how you refused to help with Sophie's wedding, and now the whole family's talking about it." And there it was, the thing I'd been dreading. I didn't think my parents would actually start spreading this around to the rest of the family, but I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. They'd done it before, especially when they wanted to paint themselves as the victims. This was just their style. Go around telling everyone their version of the story, leaving out all the important details that might make people see things differently. I tried to stay calm as I explained the situation to Lucas. "Yeah, they asked me to help pay for the wedding, and I told them no. I mean, I don't even talk to Sophie, so why would I shell out money for her big day? It doesn't make sense." Lucas listened quietly, and when I finished, he just said, "Man, I get it. I really do, but you know how your parents are. They're making it sound like you're the one causing problems, and now the whole family's talking about it. It's getting kind of messy." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about my parents and me anymore. They dragged the entire family into this, and now I was being painted as the bad guy. I could feel the frustration bubbling up, but I didn't want to take it out on Lucas. He wasn't the one stirring the pot. He was just giving me a heads up. "Great," I muttered, rubbing my temples. "So now everyone thinks I'm some selfish jerk, huh?" Lucas hesitated for a second before answering. "Well, yeah, kind of. But it's not like people know the whole story, Kev. They're only hearing what your folks are saying, and you know how they like to spin things." I laughed bitterly. "Yeah, I know exactly how they like to spin things." After I got off the phone with Lucas, I was pissed. I mean, it's one thing to have a disagreement with your parents, but to have them go around telling everyone in the family, twisting the story to make you look bad, that's a whole new level of low. I wasn't about to sit back and let them trash my name without setting the record straight. So I did something I wasn't sure I'd regret or not. I sent out a group text to the family. You know, the kind of message you think twice about before hitting send, but still do it anyway, because you're just that fed up. Yeah, that kind. It wasn't anything crazy, but I laid out the situation as clearly as I could. "Hey, just wanted to clear some things up since I've heard a lot of talk going around. Yes, Mom and Dad asked me to help pay for Sophie's wedding. No, I'm not helping. I haven't spoken to Sophie in years, and it doesn't make sense for me to pay for something I'm not involved in. I didn't start this drama, but I'm not going to be guilt-tripped into doing something I'm not comfortable with. Thanks. Short, to the point, and hopefully enough to stop people from assuming the worst about me. I didn't expect anyone to respond. Honestly, I just wanted to get my side out there before the gossip got any worse. But of course, things didn't exactly go the way I planned. Within minutes my phone started blowing up. I got a text from my aunt, a call from my grandma, and even a message from some cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Most of them were polite enough, asking if everything was okay or offering their support, which felt more like thinly veiled nosiness. But then there were the not-so-nice ones. My Uncle Peter, who's always been way too invested in family business, sent me this long-winded text about how family comes first, and how I was being petty by holding on to old grudges. He went on about how Mom and Dad were only trying to do right by Sophie, and how I should help out for the sake of the family. It was infuriating, but I decided not to respond. Engaging with people like Peter would only make things worse. Then my mom called. I could hear it in her voice. She was pissed. Daniel, what the hell is going on? Why are you sending messages to the whole family? Because Mom, you've been going around telling everyone I'm refusing to help and making me look bad. I'm just clearing the air, I said, trying to keep my cool. I didn't say anything that wasn't true, she snapped back. You are refusing to help, and now everyone's upset because they don't understand why you're being so selfish. Selfish? You've got to be kidding me, Mom. I'm not paying for a wedding I'm not even involved in. That's not selfish. That's just common sense, I shot back. Mom huffed into the phone. You don't understand, Daniel. We're trying to make sure Sophie has the wedding she deserves, and now everyone thinks we can't handle it. That's not my problem, Mom. You're the ones who promised her all this stuff. If you can't afford it, then you shouldn't have made those promises. Don't drag me into it. There was silence on the other end of the line. And for a moment, I thought maybe I'd finally gotten through to her. But then she hit me with this. You're turning your back on family, Daniel, and one day you're going to regret it. I didn't even know how to respond to that. I was just tired. Tired of the guilt trips, tired of the manipulation, tired of always being the one expected to clean up everyone else's mess. So I just said, I'm sorry you feel that way, Mom. And hung up. For the rest of the night, I just sat there staring at my phone as the notifications kept rolling in. I wasn't about to engage in more back and forth with my family, but I couldn't help but feel angry about how everything had blown up, all because I didn't want to fork over money for a wedding I wasn't even a part of. By the time I went to bed, I realized something. This whole situation wasn't just about money. It wasn't about the wedding, or Sophie, or even my parents. Really, it was about control. My family had always expected me to fall in line, to play along, to be the good son who never rocked the boat. And this time, I didn't. And maybe that's why they were so mad. Not because I wouldn't pay for the wedding, but because I finally said no. After that whole mess with the family texts and the phone call from my mom, I thought things would die down. I'd made my point, and I didn't really care if people were upset with me anymore. I wasn't about to keep fighting over something that, in my mind, was pretty simple. I wasn't paying for my sister's wedding. End of story. But like everything with my family, it didn't just end there. A few days after the last call, I get a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I figured it was probably just a delivery or something. But when I opened the door, I was pretty shocked to see my dad standing there. Now let me tell you, my dad doesn't just show up out of the blue like that. In fact, I don't think he's ever visited my place without calling first. So right away, I knew something was up. Hey Kev, he said, looking a little awkward. Can we talk? I didn't know what to say at first, but I nodded and stepped aside to let him in. I wasn't in the mood for another argument, but it didn't seem like I had much of a choice. He walked in, kind of glancing around the living room like he hadn't seen it before, even though he had. It felt tense, like neither of us knew how to start this conversation. So what's going on? I finally asked, figuring I'd let him make the first move. Dad sighed and sat down on the couch. I just wanted to clear the air, he said. Things have gotten pretty out of hand, and your mom's really upset. I sat down across from him, not really sure where this was going, but ready to defend myself if it turned into another guilt trip. Yeah, I've noticed, I said. But I don't know what you want me to do about it. I've already explained where I stand. I know, Dad said, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to find the right words. But this whole thing with Sophie's wedding, It's gotten bigger than it should have been. We didn't expect you to pay for everything, Kev. We were just hoping you could help out a little, as family. There it was again, family. That magic word they always throw out when they want me to bend. I tried to stay calm, but I could feel that frustration bubbling up again. Dad, I've already said no. I don't have anything against you or Mom, but this is Sophie's wedding. Sophie, who I haven't spoken to in 5 years. It doesn't make sense for me to pitch in when I'm not even involved in her life. Dad nodded, but I could tell he wasn't really getting it. I get that, Kev. I do. But your mom, she's really struggling with all this. We promised Sophie we'd help, and now it's turning into a mess. We don't want to look like we're falling short, especially with Jay's parents paying for everything. That's when I realized what this was really about. It wasn't about helping Sophie, or even the wedding itself. It was about appearances. They were more worried about how they looked compared to Nathan's family than they were about the actual situation. They didn't want to seem like they couldn't handle it. I understand that, Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But that's on you guys. You promised her, I didn't. You didn't ask me before making those promises, and now you want me to bail you out because it's gotten too expensive. I'm sorry, but that's not my problem. Dad leaned back, running a hand over his face. He looked tired, like the whole situation was wearing him down. You're right. We probably bit off more than we could chew, he admitted. But we didn't want Sophie to feel like we weren't supporting her. I let out a breath, trying to be patient. And I get that, I really do. But you guys have always supported Sophie. You've done more for her than you ever did for me. And I'm not saying that to be bitter, but it's the truth. So now, when you come to me expecting me to help with something I'm not even involved in, it just feels wrong. Dad was quiet for a minute, and for the first time, it seemed like he might actually be listening. I guess we didn't see it that way, he said slowly. We just thought, well, maybe if you helped it would start to mend things between you and Sophie. I almost laughed at that. Mend things between Sophie and me, as if throwing money at her wedding was going to magically fix 5 years of silence and resentment. Dad, money's not going to fix that, I said. Sophie and I have our issues, and they go way deeper than this wedding. You can't just slap a band-aid on it with a check. He sighed again, nodding like he understood, but still not really getting it. I guess you're right, he said, sounding defeated. I just don't know how to make all this better. Your mom's really upset, and it's making everything harder. That was the thing about my dad. He wasn't a bad guy, but he always tried to fix everything for everyone, even when it wasn't his responsibility. And in doing that, he'd end up dragging himself into more stress than he needed. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Dad, I'm not trying to make things harder for you guys, but I'm not going to pay for Sophie's wedding. I'm not. It's just not my responsibility, and you and Mom need to stop acting like it is. He nodded, looking down at the floor. All right, Kev. I hear you. We'll figure something out. For the first time in this whole mess, it seemed like maybe, just maybe, he was starting to accept that I wasn't going to cave, that I wasn't going to swoop in and save the day with my wallet. It felt good to finally stand my ground and have him at least acknowledge it, even if I knew my mom wasn't going to be as easy to convince. Dad stayed for a little while longer, and we talked about other stuff, work, life, anything that wasn't wedding related. It was nice to just have a normal conversation with him, something we didn't do often enough. But eventually, he had to leave. And as he stood up to go, he gave me this look like he wanted to say more, but didn't know how. Take care of yourself, Kev, he said, giving me a pat on the shoulder before heading out the door. You too, Dad, I replied, watching him walk down the steps. As I closed the door behind him, I felt this weird mix of relief and frustration. I was glad we talked, but I knew this wasn't the end of it. My mom was still fuming, Sophie was still getting married, and the family drama wasn't going to disappear overnight. But at least for now, I'd said my piece. I wasn't backing down, and honestly, that felt pretty damn good. All right. So after that talk with my dad, I thought for a second that maybe things would finally settle down. He seemed to understand where I was coming from, or at least he was willing to leave it alone for a bit. But I should have known better. When it comes to my family, things are never that simple. A few days passed, and things were quiet. Too quiet. No calls, no texts, nothing. At first it was kind of a relief. I thought maybe they were finally backing off, giving me some space to breathe. But then the silence started to feel off. You know that feeling when you just know something's brewing, but you don't know what? Yeah, that. And of course, I was right. One evening, I'm sitting at home after work, just relaxing, when my phone buzzes. It's a text from my Aunt Carol. Now, Aunt Carol is one of those relatives who's always involved in everyone's business. She's never really picked sides before, but she loves to stir the pot and act like she's the mediator in the family. So, when I saw her name pop up, I already knew this wasn't going to be good. Her message said something like, "Hey Daniel. I've been hearing a lot about what's going on with the family. I think we should talk." I sighed, debating whether or not to even respond. But then I figured, what the hell, I might as well hear her out. Maybe she had some perspective I hadn't considered. Spoiler alert, she didn't. I called her, and right from the start, it was clear where this conversation was headed. "Daniel, honey, I just want to understand why you're being so stubborn about this whole wedding thing," she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she always uses when she's about to lay into someone. "I mean, it's your sister's wedding. Don't you think you could just help out a little for the sake of the family?" There it was again. That same phrase, "for the sake of the family." Like that was supposed to be the magic word that made me open my wallet and forget all the crap I've been through. "I've already explained this to Mom and Dad," I said, trying to stay calm, even though I could feel my patience thinning. "I don't have a relationship with Sophie. We haven't spoken in 5 years, Carol. I'm not going to help pay for a wedding when I'm not even part of her life." And Carol sighed, like she was talking to a toddler who just couldn't understand simple logic. "But Daniel, family is family. You don't have to be best friends with Sophie to do something nice for her. Weddings are a big deal. It's one of those events where everyone comes together. It could be a chance for you two to reconnect." I almost laughed at that. Reconnect after 5 years of nothing, and I was supposed to do that by throwing money at her wedding? It sounded ridiculous. "I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Sophie and I aren't going to magically fix things just because I helped pay for her wedding. It doesn't work like that, and I'm not going to pretend like everything's fine between us when it's not." Carol was quiet for a moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe she was starting to get it. But then she hit me with, "You're being really selfish, Daniel." That word, selfish. I'd heard it so many times over the last few weeks, and every time I heard it, it made my blood boil. Selfish for not wanting to be dragged into a situation that had nothing to do with me. For standing up for myself after years of being overlooked and ignored. "How am I being selfish?" I asked, my voice sharper now. "I've done nothing but try to keep the peace in this family for years. I've stayed quiet. I've stayed out of the drama. And now when I finally say no to something, I'm the selfish one." Aunt Carol clicked her tongue, clearly not impressed with my little rant. "You're not seeing the bigger picture, Daniel. This is about more than just you and Sophie. It's about the family. Your parents are heartbroken over this. And I'm the one who's supposed to make that happen by giving them money," I shot back. "Come on, Carol. You know that's ridiculous." She sighed again, this time sounding more annoyed than sweet. "Look, I'm just trying to help. I think you're making a big deal out of nothing. But if you're set on this, fine. Just know that you're making things harder for everyone." I didn't even know what to say to that. There was no winning here. No matter how many times I explained myself, it was never enough. I was always the bad guy in their eyes. The one causing problems. "All right, Carol," I said, tired of the whole conversation. "Thanks for the talk." Before she could respond, I hung up the phone. I didn't have the energy for it anymore. As I sat there staring at my phone, I couldn't help but feel angry. Angry at my parents for dragging the family into this. Angry at my relatives for making me out to be the villain. And honestly, a little angry at myself for even caring about what they thought. I knew I was right to say no, but the constant pressure was starting to wear on me. The next day, I went to work like usual, trying to push the family drama out of my mind. But it was harder than I thought. Every time I checked my phone, there was another message from someone in the family, cousins, uncles, even a few people I hadn't spoken to in years, all chiming in with their opinions on the situation. By lunchtime, I'd had enough. I turned off my phone and shoved it into my toolbox, deciding to just focus on the cars in front of me and forget about the rest. At least at the garage, things made sense. You fixed something. It works. Simple. None of this emotional mess that came with family. When I got home that night, I hesitated before turning my phone back on. Part of me didn't even want to deal with whatever new messages had come through. But of course, curiosity got the better of me. There were a few more texts from family, but one stood out, a message from Sophie. Now, this was the last thing I expected. I hadn't spoken to her in 5 years, and suddenly there was a message from her sitting right there on my screen. I didn't know whether to open it or ignore it. Part of me thought it might just be another guilt trip, or maybe, even worse, some kind of demand for money directly from her. But after a minute of staring at the notification, I decided to open it. Her message was short. Too short for how long we hadn't spoken. "Can we talk?" That's all it said. No apology, no explanation, just those 3 words. I didn't know what to make of it. On one hand, I was curious. On the other, I was wary. Why now, after all this time? Was it because of the wedding? Because I'd refused to pay? Or was it something else entirely? I sat there staring at the screen, my finger hovering over the keyboard as I tried to figure out what to say. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to avoid whatever new drama this was about to stir up. But another part of me, maybe the part that still cared, even just a little, wanted to hear her out. After a long pause, I typed a reply. "Sure." And just like that, the door I thought I'd closed for good creaked open a little bit. So, after I sent that sure text to Sophie, I wasn't really sure what was going to happen next. I mean, it had been 5 years, and we hadn't exchanged a single word during all that time. Now, all of a sudden she wants to talk. It felt off, like there had to be something more behind it. But I didn't know what to expect, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. A couple of hours went by, and I started thinking maybe she wasn't actually going to respond. Maybe she just wanted to feel like she made an effort. Or maybe she was waiting for me to make the next move. Either way, I was fine with the silence. But of course, just when I'd started to relax and move on with my evening, my phone buzzed again. It was Sophie. She'd replied, "Can we meet up? I don't want to do this over text." I stared at the message for a while, not sure how to feel about it. Part of me was curious. Sure, I'd been waiting for some kind of explanation for years. But at the same time, the other part of me was still holding on to all that frustration and anger. I didn't know if I was ready to meet her face to face, and especially not with all the wedding stuff still hanging over our heads. But in the end, I figured if I didn't meet her now, I'd never get any real closure on this whole situation, so I sent back a quick reply. "All right. When and where?" We ended up agreeing to meet at this little coffee shop downtown the next afternoon. Nothing too fancy, just a quiet place where we could talk. As I walked in the next day, I could feel that familiar tension in my chest. I hadn't seen Sophie in years, and I had no idea what this conversation was going to look like. She was already sitting at a table when I walked in, staring at her phone. She looked up when I approached, and for a second, we just kind of awkwardly stared at each other. She looked different, not in a bad way, just more grown up. I guess it was weird seeing her after all this time. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey," I replied, taking a seat across from her. The tension was thick, like neither of us knew where to start. After a long pause, she sighed. "Look, I know things between us have been bad, and I get why you're mad. I probably deserve it." That caught me off guard. I'd expected her to jump straight into wedding talk, maybe even ask for money directly, but here she was, admitting she'd screwed up. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, letting her continue. "I messed up a lot. I know that. And I'm not asking you to forget everything. But I just wanted to try to fix things before it's too late." I leaned back in my chair, processing her words. Part of me wanted to be skeptical, to believe she was just saying this because she needed something from me. But another part of me saw how genuine she looked. Like maybe, just maybe, she really wanted to make things right. "I don't know, Sophie," I said finally. "A lot's happened. You can't just undo all of that with an apology." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "I know. But I have to try." And for the first time in years, I realized that maybe this wasn't about the wedding. Mother-in-law gave iPhones to every grandchild except my daughter. She's not blood, so I replied, "Pack your bags and get out of my house. These are for the family, sweetheart." My mother-in-law's remarks pierced the air like shattered glass as my 8-year-old daughter peered at the iPhone 16 Pro Max that she had just distributed to the other children. The hush that ensued was deafening. 20 people were in my living room in the house I bought, watching her purposefully exclude my small kid from the most costly family gift of the year. "Why isn't there one for me, grandmother?" my kid inquired with that soul-crushing innocence. "Because you are not truly a family treasure. These are exclusively for my blood grandchildren," The sound of my daughter running upstairs wailing, mixed with the visitor's uneasy laughing. When I approached my mother-in-law, she simply shrugged. "This is my money. I will give it to anybody I choose." My wife returned home from her trip the following day. Her reaction froze my blood. "Mom is just old. I'm sure she didn't mean any harm. You're overreacting, as usual." That night, everything changed. I informed my wife that she had 24 hours to make a decision. Either your mother leaves my house, or you accompany her. The first combat occurred at daybreak. My wife discovered me in the kitchen, pouring coffee with the calm of someone who has already taken a final decision. "You can't just put her out on the street," she yelled in that high-pitched voice she had when she was losing control. "She's my mom. She is old," I said without raising my voice. "This is my house. The deadline cannot be negotiated. So what is she supposed to do? Live on the streets?" She should have thought about that before humiliating my daughter. The slight was intended for the little girl you've reared since she was 2. The tiny girl who calls you mom. I could see her face crumble as I put it into perspective. However, the period of vulnerability lasted only seconds before familial loyalty closed ranks. My mother-in-law became emboldened by my wife's backing and shut herself in the guest suite. When I went down to remind her that she only had 18 hours left, she smiled, which chilled my blood. "I am not going anywhere, I have tenancy rights." Her voice was filled with the confidence that only legal ignorance can bring. "And if you try anything, I will call the cops for domestic violence." My wife became her personal servant, delivering her meals and serving as a human shield. "Leave her alone," she would tell me whenever I reached that part of the house. "She is already stressed enough." That afternoon, I made the call that changed everything. My lawyer confirmed what I had suspected. A legal eviction could take several months. He advised me, as a professional who fees by the minute, to record every breath that woman takes in your home. Every insult, every threat, every time she spits at you. In hostile eviction proceedings, the one with the best paperwork wins. That night, I generated a password-protected digital file. I dubbed it a war diary, and began to log everything. Date, time, and complete description. Each slam of the delicious door. Every veiled insult she mumbled as I walked past the kitchen. Every time my daughter came downstairs she cried because grandma refused to communicate to me. The first revelation occurred when I reviewed the bank statements. My wife had given her the debit card. The charges were outrageous. Amazon charges $340 for a premium coffee maker shipped directly to the apartment. $180 for Korean skincare goods. Premium vitamin supplements cost $95. Seriously, I showed the statement to my wife. "You're giving her money for what she did to our daughter." She replied, without looking me in the eye, "About their medical expenses. She is old. She requires things." I documented each transaction. Each expensive purchase added another line to my file, proving that there was no humility or guilt. The nuclear escalation occurred a week later. A social worker from Child Protective Services knocked on my home, bringing an anonymous complaint. Serious home tensions create an unstable and potentially dangerous setting for a kid. When I carefully presented the problem, giving copies of my initial diary as proof of a pattern of antagonism and emotional abuse against my daughter, her attitude changed dramatically. Before leaving, she stated that the individual who created this report supplied very particular information on your residence. Details that only someone who lives here would know. When I showed my wife the report, she refused to believe it. It must have been someone else. "You're making up stories to turn me against my mother." Her eyes glowed with the blazing wrath that occurs when reality collides with denial. That night, I mounted security cameras around the communal spaces. It is a suggestion from the social worker. I informed them during supper to ensure transparency in the household. My wife could not object. My mother-in-law became pallid. I served the formal eviction notice the next day. 30 days. The official clock had started ticking. The house was turned into a Cold War zone. My wife retreated to the living room sofa and refused to share a bed with me. Our daughter was stuck in a deafening quiet. But in the midst of the chaos, I did something that left me feeling odd. I discreetly got my daughter the new iPhone 16 Pro Max. I handed it to her in her room. The box is wrapped in basic gift paper. "This is from Dad," I replied, holding her as her eyes welled up with delighted emotions. "But keep it a secret for now, okay? So we don't cause more difficulty." It was my way of safeguarding her in the midst of the commotion, of reminding her that no matter what occurred, she was my top priority. As I examined the camera footage each night, I knew something. This was more than just kicking my mother-in-law out. My goal had altered. I wanted to free my wife from her own denial before it was too late for all three of us. The official eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a sheriff who appeared more uncomfortable than we were. 30 days. The conflict has become official. My mother-in-law accepted the document with a smile that chilled my blood. She gave me 30 days to locate an excellent lawyer who would teach me who was truly in power here, waving the paper like confetti. The cameras I'd installed proved to be my salvation. The first capture occurred that same afternoon. I was examining the recordings when I overheard my mother-in-law conversing with my wife in the kitchen. When this idiot runs out of money to hire lawyers, he will give up. Furthermore, this home should be yours by right. You are my daughter, not him. My wife whispered something inaudible, but she did not contradict herself. I saved the file immediately. The second capture occurred 2 days later. I caught her accidentally scratching the hardwood floor in the living room with one of her large luggage, which she dragged with deliberate force while staring directly at me. When I feigned not to notice, she smiled and continued doing it. What exactly happened here? I asked my wife that night, pointing to the marks. It must have been an accident. Mom has arthritis. She is not very good at carrying things. But I had the video. Every intentional action. Every malicious smile. The third capture changed everything. The hallway camera captured her entering my office when she assumed no one was present. I saw her walk through my desk, unlock drawers, and ultimately take a pair of silver cufflinks that belonged to my father and place them in her pocketbook. When I told my wife that things were missing, her response revealed how lost she was. I'm sure she merely stashed them somewhere secure so they don't get lost among all the attorneys and papers. My wife had passed a line. It was no longer simply denial, there was active complicity. The final straw came a week later. I was working from home when I heard cries in the garden. I dashed out and saw my kid screaming beside the water, completely soaking with her clothing on. What happened? I yelled at my mother-in-law who was standing on the edge, arms crossed. She slipped, she added with a nasty smile I recognized all too well. She was running where she should not have been. My daughter trembled in my arms. Daddy, I didn't slip. Grandma pushed me because I told her I didn't love her anymore. Children lie all the time, my mother-in-law responded, especially those who haven't learned to respect their elders. That night, while I dried my daughter's hair, I took a life-changing decision. It was time to put a stop to this farce. My mother-in-law had gone for a walk, most likely to complain to a neighbor about how terrible I was. I waited for the right moment to tell my wife that I wanted to have a truce night to talk and sort things out like adults. I ordered her favorite food from that Thai restaurant she adored, placed candles on the dining room table, and created a false hope atmosphere. We had the house to ourselves. My wife sat at the table with a hesitant face, as if anticipating an apology or a capitulation. Her hands were clenched, frightened but hopeful. I didn't say anything at first, simply turning on the dining room TV and connecting my laptop. She inquired. I want to show you something, I said with the calm that comes from holding all the cards. The first video began to play, with her mother telling her that the house should be hers by right, and that I was an idiot who would give up. I watched my wife's face tense. This must be out of context, she murmured, but her voice no longer sounded convinced. Wait, there's more. The second video showed the deliberate sabotage of the floor, every calculated movement, every defiant look at the camera. My wife started shaking her head, but her eyes were fixed on the screen. The third video was the final blow, the theft of my father's cufflinks, which was clear, sharp, and undeniable. I saw her open my desk, specifically look for those items, and hide them in her purse. My wife fell silent, her mouth agape. And this, I said, playing the audio my lawyer had legally obtained, is the call to Child Protective Services. My mother-in-law's voice was unmistakable. Yes, I want to report a dangerous situation for a minor. The stepfather is creating a hostile and violent environment, and the child is at risk. My wife's house of cards, built on denial, collapsed in an instant. I watched her face go through all the stages: shock, comprehension, pain, anger. She burst into tears, but these tears were different. She wasn't crying for her mother or the situation. She was crying for her own blindness, for the pain she had allowed to be inflicted on the child she had raised as her own, for the betrayal she had unwittingly enabled. Oh my God, she said quietly. How could I have been so blind? How could I allow her to do this to our daughter? At that point, we heard the front door close. My mother-in-law had returned from her walk, likely satisfied with poisoning another neighbor against me. My wife brushed away her tears and rose from the table with a drive I hadn't seen in years. She strode toward the guest suite with steps that sounded like hammer blows. I followed her discreetly, remaining in the hallway. This was her struggle, and she had to win it alone. She opened the door without knocking. My mother-in-law was organizing her day's purchases. She had spent more of my wife's money on fancy items she did not require. My wife spoke in a hard, steely tone that I had never heard her employ before. "Pack your belongings. You are leaving now." My mother-in-law turned with her condescending smile, which she had honed over decades. "Excuse me. I am not going anywhere. This is just as much my home as yours. I watched the videos, Mom. I witnessed everything." My mother-in-law's smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. "I spotted you stealing. I watched you intentionally harm the house. I heard you contacted social services to damage an innocent child." My wife's voice quivered, but not with fear, but with controlled rage, "And I saw you shove my daughter into the water." "You have no proof of any of that," my mother-in-law protested, but her arrogance had vanished. My wife pulled out her phone and showed her one of the videos. "Isn't this proof?" My mother-in-law's eyes were filled with fear for the first time in my memory. The fear of someone who has finally realized that her actions have repercussions. "You have 2 hours," my wife said. "Contact whoever you need to contact, find a place to stay, but after 9 o'clock tonight, I don't want to see you in this house. You can't do this to me. I'm your mother, and a mother doesn't abuse her daughter's children, steal, or lie." My wife took another step closer. "You haven't been my mother for a long time. You've been a parasite." My mother-in-law tried one last desperate attack. "He's brainwashing you. He recorded those videos to manipulate you." "No," my wife responded with a terrifying calm. "He installed those cameras to protect our family from you." I stood in the hallway, watching the power shift, and I didn't intervene. There was no need. My wife had found her voice, her backbone, her limit, and for the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of hope for our marriage. The war was about to end, but the most important victory had already been won. My wife had opened her eyes, and the next day, I witnessed something I never expected to see. My wife, with a glacial calm I didn't know she possessed, was helping her mother pack. There were no screams or pleas, just a heavy silence that seemed to crush the air in the room. My mother-in-law made one last desperate attempt at manipulation, throwing herself on the suite floor and sobbing with a performance she had perfected over decades. "He's turned you against me," she wailed, clutching the hem of my wife's jeans like a toddler. "I'm your mother. You cannot do this to me." My wife paused and gazed down at her. The coldness in her words sent shivers down my spine. "No, you did it. You harmed my daughter. You shoved a youngster into the pool and stole from my own home." She knelt to her mother's level. "It is over." For the first time in my life, I noticed genuine terror in my mother-in-law's eyes. The woman who had ruled my wife for decades realized she had lost all control in an instant. "You have no right," she cried, standing up with urgency she had never displayed. "This house should be mine. I am blood family." "Family?" My wife stood up, and I saw the powerful lady who had been hiding behind the obedient daughter for years. "A family does not pressure its children. A family does not steal. A family does not contact social services to harm innocent people." The mother-in-law played one final card. "You're going to regret this. You are nothing without me. I raised you. I gave you everything. You conditioned me. You manipulated me. You taught me to value your comfort over the health of my own baby." My wife's voice broke, not from weakness, but from liberty. "Not anymore." 2 hours later, her sister arrived to bring her up. The anxiety in the air was evident when my sister-in-law came and noticed the baggage. "What really happened?" she inquired directly. I didn't have to answer. My wife handed her her phone, which was playing one of the videos. I watched my sister-in-law's face turn from shock to loathing as she saw her mother take from my desk. "Oh my God, Mother. What else have you done?" My mother-in-law tried her last move. "They're fake videos. He manipulated them. But my sister-in-law had already seen enough. Get your things. Let's go." My mother-in-law turned to me with a look of pure hatred. "This isn't over. I'm going to destroy you." I walked up to her and said, in the calmest voice I could muster, "You already tried and you lost." The next morning my wife's phone was constantly vibrating with text messages and Facebook notifications from her friends, neighbors, and distant cousins. I thought that was the end of the war, but I was mistaken. The war had only changed the battlefields. How could you abandon your own mother, Your mother is devastated. My mother-in-law had launched her nuclear bomb, painting herself as a frail, elderly woman, unjustly kicked out by a controlling son-in-law and a brainwashed daughter. She claims her son-in-law manipulated you into hating her. I saw your mother's post and how awful. I'm praying for her. I watched my wife read the post, her face a mask of fury and pain, and I feared the old doubt would return, but then she looked up and met my gaze with steely eyes. She talked about how she only wanted to reunite the family, and how her heart was broken. She didn't mention the theft, the call to social services, or the pool incident. She was the ideal victim. I'm sure many of you have seen my mother's post, but I'd like you to watch this first, because the facts speak for themselves. Instead of responding to the post or starting a comment war, she did something much smarter. She formed a WhatsApp group with key family members and sent a single message to them. She attached the videos of the theft, the sabotage, and the audio of the call to social services. Then, with a terrifying calm, she posted a single public comment under her mother's post. Mom, it breaks my heart that you've chosen to make this public with a version so far from reality. The decision we made was the hardest of my life, and it was to protect my daughter. The mother-in-law's post was exposed for what it was, a lie, and the tone of the messages changed within hours. The family, now armed with irrefutable evidence, took our side. Shortly after, we noticed that my mother-in-law had deleted her post, unable to bear the humiliation. Her last weapon had blown up in her face, and she was now completely alone. That night, my wife did something that showed me that the healing had truly begun. She took an old velvet box from the closet, which contained a pile of jewelry rings, bracelets, and a pearl necklace. What is this? I asked. It's the jewelry my mother gave me, she said, her voice firm. Every piece came with a condition, a favor with a string attached. They aren't gifts, they're shackles. The next day, we went to a pawn shop together, and we sold everything. We didn't want to keep anything that reminded us of that venomous snake. With the money, we planned our next family vacation. That afternoon, we sat down with our daughter. Remember how you've always wanted to go to the amusement park in Orlando? My wife remarked. And how Grandma always said it was a waste of time and money? My daughter nodded, a shadow of sadness in her eyes. Well, my wife continued, taking her hands. Grandma was incorrect. Dreams are not a waste of time. They are the most significant aspect. And we're going on our next trip. How does that sound? My daughter's eyes grew like saucers, brimming with tears of surprise and joy. The mother-in-law's special malice, which had not only ostracized her but also mocked her wishes, was being destroyed and used as fuel to realize those precise ambitions. That night, as my daughter slept, my wife looked at me and said, "My mother was slowly stealing our happiness. Now it's time to reclaim it." And for the first time in years, my house felt like the home it was always supposed to be. A few months later, the war's echoes faded. We transformed her old guest suite, the Viper's Nest, into a family movie theater. Nights of screaming and tension were replaced by popcorn-filled movie marathons. Our daughter's laughter was the sole sound in the corridor. A phone call revealed the true conclusion. It was my sister-in-law. My wife moved away to converse, and when she returned, her expression was a muddled mix of sadness and relief. She sat next to me in silence for a long time. What happened? I inquired calmly. She took a deep breath. It was my sister. She could not take it anymore. The lies and deception, attempting to turn her against her own husband. It followed the same old pattern. She halted and glanced at me. They had her committed. Mom is currently in a nursing facility. The news landed in the room like a stone. There was no celebration, no joy, only the weight of an unavoidable conclusion. My wife's voice broke as she continued. My sister and I will pay half and half. It's the best place they could find, but that's how she lives today. I held her tightly. You did not put her there, I whispered. She built the road herself, brick by brick. As a final act of closure, my wife tore up the 3 unopened letters her mother had sent her a few days before. Our daughter, free of the shadow of condemnation, has grown into a more confident, louder, and happier youngster. One night, my wife took my hands and whispered something that both broke and healed me. My family consists of only you and her. Forgive me for taking so long to see it. Now I'd like to ask you. What would you have done in my place? Was I overly severe, or should I have responded sooner? Edit. We fulfilled our commitment. We traveled to Orlando last month. When I saw my daughter meet her favorite characters and scream with joy on every ride, I knew we had truly won. She knelt to her mother's level. It's over. For the first time in my life, I noticed genuine terror in my mother-in-law's eyes. The woman who had ruled my wife for decades realized she had lost all control in an instant. "You have no right," she cried, standing up with urgency she had never displayed. "This house should be mine. I'm blood family." Family? My wife stood up, and for the first time, I saw the strong woman who had been hiding for years behind the obedient daughter. A family doesn't push children. A family doesn't steal. A family doesn't call social services to hurt innocent people. The mother-in-law played one final card. "You're going to regret this. You're nothing without me. I raised you. I gave you everything. You conditioned me. You manipulated me. You taught me to prioritize your comfort over the well-being of my own daughter." My wife's voice broke. Not from weakness, but from liberty. Not anymore. 2 hours later, her sister arrived to bring her up. The anxiety in the air was evident when my sister-in-law came and noticed the baggage. "What really happened?" she inquired directly. I didn't have to answer. My wife handed her a phone with one of the videos playing. I watched my sister-in-law's face turn from shock to loathing as she saw her mother take from my desk. "Oh my God, Mom, what else have you done?" My mother-in-law tried her final move. "They're fake videos. He manipulated them." However, my sister-in-law had already seen enough. "Get your things, let's go." My mother-in-law gave me a look of utter loathing. "This isn't over. I'm going to destroy you." I walked up to her and, in the calmest voice I could summon, stated, "You already tried and lost. Now leave." I assumed that was it. I was mistaken. The conflict had just shifted the battlefields. The next morning, my wife awoke to her phone vibrating non-stop. It was text messages and Facebook updates from her friends, neighbors, and distant cousins. "How could you throw your own mother out on the street? Your mom is heartbroken. She says her son-in-law manipulated you into hating her. I saw your mother's post. How awful. I'm praying for her." My mother-in-law had launched a nuclear weapon. She had put a lengthy, sad story on her Facebook profile, a masterpiece of fabrication. She portrayed herself as a fragile, elderly woman who was unfairly booted out by her domineering son-in-law and indoctrinated daughter. She expressed how she merely wanted to reunite the family, and how her heart was torn. She made no mention of the theft, the call to social services, or the pool incident. She was a wonderful victim. My wife read the post with a furious and pained expression on her face. For a brief moment, I feared the old doubt might resurface, but she looked up and met my gaze with steely determination. "The time for being quiet is over," she remarked. She did not respond to the post. She did not begin a comment war. She did something far smarter. She made a WhatsApp group for essential family members and sent a single message. "I know many of you have seen my mother's post. Before anything else, I ask you to watch this. The facts speak for themselves." She sent footage of the theft and sabotage, as well as audio of the call to social services. Then, with scary calm, she left a single public comment beneath her mother's post. "Mom, it breaks my heart that you've chosen to make this public with a version so far from reality. The decision we made was the hardest of my life, and it was to protect my daughter. I'm not going to engage in a war here. Our close family already knows the whole truth." It was checkmate. The mother-in-law's post was exposed as what it was. A lie. Within hours, the tone of the communications had shifted. The pals who attacked her have since written to apologize. The family, now equipped with indisputable proof, joined our cause. Shortly after, we realized my mother-in-law had erased her post, unable to take the embarrassment. Her last weapon had exploded in her face. Now she was entirely alone. That night, my wife did something to show me that the healing process had begun. She removed an old velvet box from the closet. Inside, there was a collection of jewels, including rings, bracelets, and a pearl necklace. "What's this?" I inquired. "It's the jewelry my mother gave me," she explained, her voice steely. "Every piece came with a condition, with a favor, with a string attached. They aren't gifts. They're shackles." The following day we went to a pawn shop together. We sold every item. We did not want to keep anything that reminded us of the dangerous snake. With the money, we planned our next family holiday. That afternoon, we sat with our daughter. "Yeah. Remember how you've always wanted to go to the amusement park in Orlando?" my spouse asked me. "And remember how Grandma always said it was a waste of time and money?" My daughter nodded, a hint of melancholy in her eyes. "Well," my spouse said as she raised her hands, "Grandma was wrong. Your dreams are not a waste of time. They are the most important thing. And we're going on our next vacation. How does that sound? My daughter's eyes grew like saucers, brimming with tears of surprise and joy. The mother-in-law's special malice, which had not only excluded but also belittled her wishes, was being destroyed and used as fuel to accomplish those precise goals. That night, as my daughter slept, my wife looked at me and said, "My mother was slowly stealing our happiness. Now it's time to reclaim it." And for the first time in years, my house felt like the home it was always supposed to be. A few months later, the war's echoes faded. We converted the old guest suite, her previous viper's nest, into a family movie theater. Nights of screaming and tension were replaced by popcorn-filled movie marathons. Our daughter's laughter was the sole sound in the corridor. A phone call revealed the true conclusion. It was my sister-in-law. My wife moved away to converse, and when she returned, her expression was a muddled mix of sadness and relief. She sat next to me in silence for a long time. "What happened?" I inquired calmly. She took a deep breath. "It was my sister. She couldn't take it anymore, the lies, the manipulation, trying to turn her against her own husband. It was the same old pattern." She glanced at me for a moment. "They had her committed. Mom is in a nursing home." The news landed in the room like a stone. There was no celebration, no joy, only the weight of an unavoidable conclusion. "My sister and I will pay half and half," my wife said, her voice quivering. "It's the best place they could find, but that's her life now." I held her tightly. "You didn't put her there," I said. "She built that road herself, brick by brick." As a final act of closure, my wife tore up the 3 unopened letters her mother had sent her a few days before. Our daughter, free of the shadow of condemnation, has grown into a more confident, louder, and happier youngster. One night, my wife took my hands and whispered something that both broke and healed me. "My family is you and her, no one else. Forgive me for taking so long to see it. Now I ask you, what would you have done in my place? Was I too harsh, or should I have acted sooner?" Edit. We fulfilled our commitment. We traveled to Orlando last month. When I saw my daughter meet her favorite characters and scream with joy on every ride, I knew we had truly won.